Good evening, everybody, and welcome back then to another LFM stream, back for another round of the Case King Pro Series. We came away from a very exciting round at Paul Ricard last week, and we have come to the wonderful Mount Panorama race circuit for round number 3. We are back at the mountain for what will be sure to be another fantastic evening of action. 90 minutes of racing for the drivers tonight as well, so the additional challenge of all of the scary, spooky barriers of this incredible circuit, combined with that little extra bit of running in the race as well, so they will be put against one of the greatest sim racing style challenges that you can possibly have in the world of ACC. Speaking of last round, Paul Ricard, like I say, a fantastic race where in the end Luke Whitehead ended up taking a dominant victory ahead of his teammate. It was a Brit Veloce style lineup 1-2 for Luke Whitehead and Aidan Walsingham, with Dario Aiemolo rounding out the podium positions, with the championship standings looking pretty tight at the top of the field, with Tinko van der Velde still maintaining the lead, the reigning Pro Series champion already with one victory to his name. Luke Whitehead in hot pursuit, currently sitting in P2, and then the likes of Jacob Osterman sitting in P3, but all in tow, the likes of Aiemolo, Castorino, Walsingham, Rotas, Correcas, DeCampo, Carpenen, all very much hot on the heels of those at the pointy end of the grid. Remember, some fantastic prizes up for grab in the Case King Pro Series, so these guys are going to be giving it everything whilst they tackle this very, very tricky circuit. And speaking of this tricky circuit, we should probably take a little bit of a closer look as to exactly why this is such a formidable layout. Even Luke Whitehead, last week's race winner, who looked so confident in his Porsche around Paul Ricard, was a bit wary of this one. It is a very, very demanding circuit. Through Hell Corner, I think the name itself is already kind of giving you the elements of how you need to be approaching this circuit, because it's a pretty scary one to take on, and then you wind your way out through the Hill of Quarry into the cutting, and these corners come at you thick and fast. Barriers are no small feat to negotiate around here. High speed action all the way up over Crest of McPhillamy Park into the S's, through down in towards the Dipper, and then you come through Forest Elbow to have this massive run down the back of the Conrod Straight. Overtaking opportunities will be aplenty, not particularly in that middle sector. That's kind of effectively a one-way street. You can see some pretty daring overtakes sometimes from drivers in that part of the lap, but predominantly all the slipstream is going to be done all the way down through the chase in towards turn 21, and maybe some opportunities as well through in towards Murray's. We sometimes see turn 1 and turn 2 as well. So whilst this is a circuit where you have a little bit of single file running over at the very top of the mountain, there is definitely plenty of overtaking action available, and it really gives a sense of dynamic in terms of how do you approach setting up your car, because do you go for something that's going to allow you to make progress when those opportunities come about, give yourself that straight line speed benefit and be like an absolute rocket ship on those two straights, or do you go for confidence, do you go for consistency and trying to make sure that you can hold on to the tyres and hold on to the car, more importantly, over the top part of the circuit, because it's such a demanding section, and if you've got a car that you're just a little bit tentative with, this circuit will bite you, and when it does, it's usually in a pretty spectacular fashion. Rather famously, here in the Case King Pro Series, we have Florian Duacop, who I do believe is with us again in the top split tonight, and he was leading by a country mile. The Mercedes, when it was in its prime around this circuit, had I think about a 40-second advantage over the next car. And he came through on the penultimate lap of the race, came over McPhillamy Park and in towards Skyline, and had a massive impact into almost two barriers, but just as fortunately for him, just the one. Managed to keep things going in the end, but his car was almost crippled with how much damage that there was on it, and he was being hunted down very quickly from those behind. Still managed to just about claim his one and only victory in the Case King Pro Series, but by only a handful of seconds, and in one of the most nail-biting finishes that we have ever had in this series. Will we have the same sort of action tonight? This circuit is incredibly unpredictable, so we'll have to wait and see, but very much likely to be seeing a lot of exciting action on circuit. Do also want to say a big thank you for all of the support on the channel. Once again, we are almost near towards 800 followers. I don't know if we'll quite make our way towards that milestone tonight, but if you are enjoying the action, if you love what you see here on this channel, then do consider giving it a follow. I can guarantee you there is going to be action start to finish in this 90-minute race. that we have going on this evening. Server will be up now, so we'll have a look and see how our drivers are getting on in their final bits of preparation. They have about 50 minutes of practice before they get into their qualifying session and then the 90-minute race. And as we always talk about, these final moments, especially around a circuit like this, which is so demanding on a driver's confidence, how do you go about it? Do you look to try to get yourself in as best of a spot as you possibly can for qualifying and really hope that you're going to be able to stay out of trouble in those opening laps, because there can be some massive pile-ups and chaos around this circuit? So do you try to edge your bets and get as far up the grid as possible, or do you prioritise that last little bit of race running, make sure that the car is dialed in, is handling the bumps well, and that you're able to really push it over the top part of this circuit? Very different approaches are often taken by these drivers, but these are some of the very best on the LFM platform. And there's some pretty special names in this grid tonight as well. There's some faces that we've seen from quite often in this championship, and there's a few that I'm sure will be known to you that have returned, maybe just for a one-off, but certainly a welcome return nonetheless. And that is going to really be very interesting to see how everyone is dealing with this fantastic circuit. So we will have a look at how our drivers are getting on in just a moment. We'll just sort out the final bits and pieces of the overlay, and I'm going to concede that I'm going to have a bit of fun trying to work out why that's not working, so we'll negotiate that in the background and see how that gets on. Meanwhile, whilst I'm addressing technical issues on this side, I would be very interested to hear from you in the chat what your thoughts are around this circuit, because we managed to speak to a couple of our drivers last week after Paul Ricard, the circuit which has, you know, all this great amount of or runoff, so that you're never really in too much fear of when things end up going wrong, because you've got the opportunities to not suffer massively poorly in terms of consequences in the grand scheme of things. Whereas around this circuit, there are extremely small margins of error. Also, big thank you for Mattis Lateo for the raid. We have had Mattis in the Pro Series on quite a few occasions. A fantastic driver, and thank you very much for the raid on the stream. Big welcome to all of you. If you are making your way to the channel for the first time, of course, especially if you are coming from the Lateo Strait, I'm sure that you will be familiar with this series already, but a big warm welcome to all of you. But yeah, Luke Whitehead, incredibly competent driver, obviously last week's race winner, champion in his own right across several different disciplines and competitions and ACC and things like that. But this circuit, he's a little bit fearful of it because he knows just how careful you have to be around here because of how quickly it can go wrong. So it's going to be a big challenge for these drivers. And as we make our way over in towards this little bit of practice, you may notice that there's perhaps just a slight added challenge that we're in pitch black conditions. And as we see the wonderful Bentley driven by Timo Karppinen, didn't have the greatest of rounds last week, much to the disappointment of everybody. Got a drive-through penalty very early on in the race due to corner cuts, but he did have a very strong return through the field, and he'll be hoping that he doesn't end up falling into the same sorts of errors this time around, but that is going to be a car that could be very interesting around here indeed, because the back end extremely loose on the Bentley. Fun fact that we have in all of the cars we've got in ACC, it's the only car that has a centre of mass that's slightly further forwards than it is back. Even the likes of the Mercedes, would you believe it, because of how far tucked in that engine is under the bonnet, it still doesn't quite have a forward bias centre of mass, and that's what gives this Bentley such a unique feel. Very tail-happy car, and it gives it some good agility, which, considering the size of this rather beastly-looking car, does sometimes, when when you're looking to dial in the confidence, when you've got a car that is starting to maybe take a little bit too much out of its rear tyres, isn't always what you're likely going to be wanting it to do. So it is a tricky one to balance, but Karppinen, a very experienced driver, he's a race winner around this circuit as well in the Lamborghini Evo 2. I do believe that may have been 2 seasons ago when he took victory in that car, so he knows how to be quick around here, as it does right now Mr. Soldatov in the number 17 McLaren. Of course, remember that this is the first championship of the Pro Series where we've had this custom BOP in place, so the usual standards of who are we expecting to be quick, normally, we'd be counting Luke Whitehead potentially a little bit out of contention for this one because we know that the Porsche doesn't particularly run very well around here in its natural form. However, with this BOP in place, that's really going to shake things up and make it so much more about the raw driver skill, the confidence to be able to extract pace out of these cars lap after lap, get as close to the walls as they dare, and we'll be looking at some fantastic onboards, I am sure. We've got a man that came very close to victory in the opening rounds at Kyle Army this season, Jacob Osterman, who has demonstrated a fantastic amount of pace in that number 7 McLaren, is the only man right now into the 59s, and he's done it by 0.6 of a second over Matthias Kuhn, so keep an eye out for this McLaren. Maybe tonight will be the night that he gets his first Pro Series win on the board. And I did have a little bit of a mention of some other names we have in the field. So, Henrik Gamble, another one of the K. Kramer Racing esports drivers, and made the move over to Sprout recently alongside Marco Bischoff and Noah Reed. I'm not sure if there's anyone else that has come along with those drivers as well, but we've seen him in the Pro Series on a number of occasions. Very, very fast driver. In the early days, there was a noticeable difference between his pace and quite often Bischoff's, and that's not what you would be doing. Henrik, maybe I'll turn the camera away from him for just a moment. We'll still talk about him, but we won't look at what he's doing because it's obviously put him off ever so slightly. Henrik, he showed good pace in the days where, K. Kramer traditionally were running the Porsche every single race. But Marco and Noah were just absolutely on it, dialed in all the time. And Henrik, he would show some really good one-lap pace. But race trim did sort of vary a little bit, had a little bit of a lack in that regard compared to his teammates. More recently, he's actually being the man that they've put in for qualifying because he's got to a speed, got to a level that they're looking at and thinking, yep, he can do the job. So, Henrik, fantastic to have him back in the Pro Series and to have him probably when he's been at his best, mitigating the slight calamity with the wall. George Boothby currently going purple at the moment in that Veloce McLaren as he flies his way over in towards the S's, and the Dipper practice session is just about to round out. But speaking of some other names, like I say, that we have in this field, we've got Angelina Stroza returning from Yassi Esports. Now, Ina Stroza, if you don't know, fantastic Gran Turismo driver, and if I've got this correct, has actually been a little bit out of the sim racing scene for a while, recovering from injury. He's had quite a long road for recovery, had a fantastic amount of support online, and it is brilliant to see him back sim racing once more and to have him back with us in the Pro Series. So fantastic stuff to see the man from Chile with us once more. And another man who you may recognise the name of, Amir Hosseini, number 35 car for tonight, as hasn't been in the world of LFM for a little bit, so his number plate is a little bit low in this server, but do not let that fool you. This man, especially around this circuit, when he is dialed into a car, he is formidable. He is extremely, extremely quick, and we have not seen what he has been capable of in ACC over in LFM for a little bit, but I just have a sneaking suspicion that that man may be up there. He's in the Lamborghini, which is a car that tends to run fairly well around here. Of course, we'll have to see how the BOP plays into effect with everything, but I'm sure that he'll be looking very, very quick tonight indeed. And then, of course, we have all of our fantastic names that we've seen time and time again in this championship. They'll all be looking to try to get their best results around here as possible, because it is one of those circuits that even the act of finishing a race around here, especially when it's one that is not the shortest, a 90-minute race, just, lap after lap of intensity around this circuit, it is a very, very difficult challenge for these guys to keep on top of. So when you do manage to hook it all up, especially if you're in qualifying, you get that lap. And sim racers, sim racers know what it means when they get that lap, when everything just comes together, the flow, that suddenly the fear of the circuit getting close to the concrete walls no longer seems a factor into things because you're just absolutely on it. when you get a lap around here, that's when you feel incredibly special in the cockpit of your car, and that you really set yourself apart from the rest of the grid, and you can really have some mighty pole position margins when you really end up hooking up. We saw Jalier taking his only pole position, and it's one of his only pole positions in a while now. Last season in that McLaren, he was flying. He was devastated, having made a bit of a mistake later on in the race, ended up losing the position, and then also making a mistake down towards Forest Elbow. He was devastated, and there was heavy damage on his car that really did compromise the rest of his race incredibly. But he showed some fantastic pace, and we saw a little bit of a Jalier of old, you know, when we saw him and Marco Bischoff going toe-to-toe in, I believe it was Season 7 and Season 8. That was the Jalier that we started to see being dialed in again. All that wealth of experience that he has in the cockpit whenever he is behind the wheel really came to fruition. We'll see how he gets on tonight. I'm aware of the fact that he's apparently extremely sleepy because he's been going around doing all sorts of wonderful things at looking at some real racing in the world of WRC. I also do believe that the sound has been off, unfortunately, for the game for the last few minutes. I do apologise about that. Hopefully, you can now hear the roaring sounds of the cars making their way to start their laps. And I'll tell you what, as a bit of a reward for those, especially because I can see a bit of chat in there as well, support for this man, we'll go for an onboard with the big bad Bentley, because that'll be a nice way to get the sound back dialed in for this fantastic game. In towards Hell's Corner for the first time, on board with Carpen and his Grip Hacks engineering car. Really want to use all of that curb, but get yourself swiftly back across. Don't want to use too much of a grass on the exit, otherwise you will start to bump up and down, lose that momentum, and you want to carry as much speed up the hill as you possibly can over the crest. It's undulating all the way up. Now spot your braking point in the darkness as you make your way up towards turn 2, right after that little bit of asphalt on the left-hand side. And now on the power once more, you can see him fighting the wheel all the way up to the concrete on the left-hand side. Now up towards the cutting, thick and fast these corners will start to come. Got to be careful under brakes. It's tricky. The back end trying to step out from underneath you, and then on the power as quickly as you can, because you start to carry all of that momentum. Now look at this, over the crest into the right. Got to be so careful of the left-hand side of that wall again. Now in towards the dip. Got to keep away from the barrier on the right-hand side, carrying as much speed as you dare, almost into the concrete once more. Fantastic shots from the car. Of course, it's a right-hand drive, so we get a fantastic series of views as he heads his way now over the crest. A little bit of a mistake through McPhillamy Park and in towards the S's, down into the Dipper, and heading through this part of the circuit. And now in towards Forest Elbow, a little bit of a lift as he then heads onto the brakes. Got to be careful not to get on the brakes too early, otherwise the back of the car will start to pitch around. Early upshift, kick of oversteer on the exits. He now starts to make his way down the hill and starts to head towards the chase, carrying a great deal of speed and momentum. And let's see what he is going to be capable of doing on this lap. You can see the speed continuing to increase. It's around 282 kph as he gets hard on the brakes in towards 21 on the power as early as he can. Little bit of negotiation around the curbs, and then starts to fly his way towards Murray's Corner and see if he can round out a lap. It's been a relatively tidy effort so far from Timo. I say that as he pumps his way to the finish, but it's a 59.8 then, but it's immediately displaced by Lewis Roters in the McLaren. 54.5 in the middle sector. George Boothby does a 59.5 and goes fastest in sector 3, so the time starting to come in thick and fast as they make their way through onto their opening laps. As far as display settings, I could look to make some changes, although I will admit I don't 100% know entirely what I would be doing, and also I'm not sure if it's do let me know if amongst the masses that you would like something adjusted. I can see what I can do, but hopefully it's not too bad in the grand scheme of things. Jacob Osterman is now up to the top of the time, and she's not purple in a single sector, but has hooked up a fantastic lap so far, a 59.4 in the number 7 McLaren, although Lewis Roters immediately going very, very quickly. He's found 3 tenths already as they start to make their way up through the mountain once more, trying to negotiate this part of the track when you've got the darkness, such little vision. Jacob Osterman, I think, has actually made a mistake on his second lap, so he's backed out of that one. Lewis Roters, though, continuing to go very, very quickly. George Boothby up for 10th. Gert Fischer up by 2 tenths. He's going fast as well. Carpenter just up ahead. He's found a couple of tenths. He'll be looking to get into the 0.6s. Right now, it's Lewis Roters, the man that we are looking at the moment. Currently trying to see what can he do in this McLaren. George Boothby finding pace as well. It's going to be extremely close, in actual fact, between these two. And they're very close on circuit as well. I do believe it is Lewis Rotors that is just a smidge ahead. It is. So yes, George Boothby, so going through the chase now. And George Boothby's gained an immense amount of time under braking there. He's 4/10 up. He could be looking to go into the 58s if he has a fantastic final corner. Lewis Rotors, though, has been going extremely quickly. What can he do? Coming out of Murray's, it's a big lap from the German driver. He does a 59.0. What does George Boothby do? It's a 59.1. So not good enough to snatch it away from Lewis Rotors. Of course, still 8.5 minutes left of qualifying to go. Kick of oversteer for George Boothby. I don't think that he will be improving on this lap, but still plenty of opportunities. Luke Whitehead now in that Porsche gets himself up into the top 3, hopping and skipping in the pit lane. Obviously a very happy Porsche and a very happy man in that car when he took victory at Paul Ricard last week, but to get that Porsche into a top 3, that's showing you not just how much pace that man can extract out of this car, because he is a weapon behind the wheel of that Porsche. But the Vis BOP is bringing these cars into contention. Amedeo Castorino take a bow. The Italian driver does a 59.010. We're only 100th of the way from getting into those 58s. And the Aston Martin, a car that tends to reward confidence, tends to give the drivers that just, that ability to really extract everything out of the car, but has sometimes just lacked a little bit of pace. Now that platform may be starting to come good. We know how quick it can be in a straight line, and we know how good the electronics, the ABS, the braking capabilities on this car can be. It also tends to manage its tyres pretty well. And right now, Castorino, a race winner from Monza last season, looking very, very quick, and he's looking quick once more. Another one of our Italian race winners in one of the Italian thoroughbred cars that we have in the server as well. We've got the Lamborghini in the hands of Dario Aiemolo. He started to dial in that car very, very nicely throughout last season, took victory, was almost in contention for another victory on a couple of occasions, didn't quite end up coming to fruition. I need to have a look at this man though, because Team Company's lost a little bit of time on the exit of 22, but it's a big lap from the Bentley driver. I'm sure this will get a cheer if it does go top of the timing sheets. He's got a better exit than he did last time. What's it going to be? Oh, it's not quite good enough for provisional pole, but it's on the front row for the Bentley. Fantastic. We've got the Aston Martin, the Bentley currently locking out the front row. Who would have thought that just a few weeks ago? Aidan Walsingham managed to finish P2 last week and made that Veloce 1-2 finish. Very, very nice indeed. He is currently on a lap. He was a 10th up, but I think he's lost a little bit of time at the tail end of that one, and he won't improve at the end of that. Just a couple of hundredths shy of what he was capable of now. Could we see the first 58 of this qualifying session? Castorino, he's there or thereabouts. It's nip and tuck with his previous lap time. Let's see what's it going to be for the Italian driver. No, he's 2,000ths off his previous best. It's very close to the limit, then a little bit too far over the limit. Tinko van der Velde, a rare mistake from the Williams driver. So he heads back to the pit lane, get a fresh set of tyres on board that BMW. Abin Manson pulling over as well. A couple of drivers pulling over immediately after finishing their laps. Renault Koots, the Estonian, in the number 36 McLaren, pushing on for West Competition Racing, see what he can do when he comes out the final corner. He's 0.3 of a second up. This should get him towards the top 10. It won't quite be. Oh, a little bit shy out in the end. Does the same lap time as Valentine in the number 16 car, but currently only gets himself up to 20th place. Whereabouts do we have some of our other drivers? In a Strozer, back in the Porsche, and a man that has been very quick in this car in the past, looking to get himself back behind the wheel. Oh, and a big, big impact through the S's and into the dipper. Big mistake there, and I think he could have compromised a little bit of the lap. There was the Lamborghini that was coming through there. I couldn't quite see who that was, unfortunately, but we will try to catch a replay of Innestrozer's moment there. So go on board, beautiful sounding flat six in the back of this car, but in the end you can see just how hard he was pushing it as he came through McPhillamy Park, flying through there, and as he comes over the crest of Skyline, you can see just carries a little bit too much speed, gets all sorts of ups over the curb, into one barrier, into the other, and that was a big, big heavy moment for Innestrozer's there, and he will have to look to trying to have another go in just a moment. But thankfully, still time on the board available for drivers to dial in some more laps then. 4.5 minutes of qualifying left to go. None of our drivers inside the top 10 currently on laps of improvement. It is, in factual fact, only Sean Tempest and Florian Duakop that are finding a bit of time. As Narita bring out the yellow flag. I think he's just bailed out of a lap after finishing the last one. He currently finds himself. Whereabouts is Mr. Narita? 22nd place for the German driver, so maybe would have wanted to be a little bit further up the field. Also, Tinko van der Velde as well, of course, the championship leader right now, sitting down in P12. So not where we've expected a man that has such a dominant season last time. And so I'm speaking of domination around this circuit. Florian Duakop, he knows how to extract lap time around here. He also knows how quickly it can go wrong, but we'll see if he's able to hook it up all the way. He's currently found 4/10 on this lap. The BMW, another car that tends to give you that extra confidence to really be able to send it through these tricky parts of the circuit. Not the best, though, through that part of the lap. See how his exit fares from Forest Elbow. He's gained a 10th back again, but he's only going to be looking to get towards the top 20, I think, if he keeps up this pace until the end. Still no one improving at the pointier end of the grid. Maybe Luke Addison be able to sneak in. Jacob Osterman as well, up by a couple of tenths on his lap. Though right now, in terms of him being able to get his first victory of the season, it's looking less and less likely. Tinko van der Velde's brought the white flags. He's going slowly, so maybe back to the pits for the Dutchman, and will only leave himself enough time to go for one more flyer. Let's see what Florian can do. He's closed out the lap relatively nicely. The number 22 car looking to jump up the order. He gets himself up to P16. Good effort there from the man that's won around this circuit before. Karppinen's now started a lap. He's pretty nip and tuck with his best, but he is going quickly. What about Osterman? He's finding time 0.3 of a second up now. That would jump his way all the way up towards around that top 5. That's where we would expect to see that man. He's had a beautiful final corner. It's going to be very close to the top of the time machines. It's up to P3, and it's 15 thousandths between Castorino and Jacob Osterman. Karppinen's found his way in there with the Bentley for the time being, and he's out on the lap at the moment. Is at 0.5 tenth from P1 to P4 right now. This is what this BOP is doing, and we've got Castorino, Karppinen, Osterman, Rotors, McLarens, Astons, Bentleys making up the front end of this grid for the time being. Castorino starting another lap. This, I think, it's going to be close. I think this will be his final lap. I don't think he quite made it to the line in time. George Boothby's on a lap as well. He should have enough time for one more if he's got the fuel on board the car. Let's see a man, one of the winningest drivers in the Pro Series. He hasn't quite shown that level of form in the first couple of races. He really took the fight to Tinko at the beginning of last season, but Tinko just ended up in such a strong level of competition. Last week's race winner, Luke Whitehead, he had a purple middle sector, but he will only start P5, but still fantastic effort in the Porsche. But look at these deltas at the moment, because Karppinen in that Bentley making his way down towards the chase at the moment and looking to try to be the first man in towards the 58. Osterman's going quickly as well, so there could still be a Bentley on this pole position if Karppinen can hook up the last part of the lap. He's had a fantastic 21 and 22. He's lost a little bit of momentum on the exit. It's all going to come down to Murray's corner. He got it pretty square last time around. How does he fare this time as he makes his way towards the line? Will it be glory for the Bentley in the chat? And the chat, I'm sure, will go wild, because by a 10th and a half, Teemu Karppinen puts that Bentley on pole position. He's still got a lap, potentially, that he can put together. George Boothby, though, flashing the lights as he sees a Mercedes ahead of him, hoping that he's not going to have too much in the way of traffic. But that is a big, big lap time from the Finnish driver. That's a big, big mistake, and a rare mistake from George Boothby. And maybe a bit of damage on board that as George Boothby's qualifying over. So George Boothby, it will not be on pole position for Bathurst. It's all right now sitting in the hands of Karppinen. Castorino hasn't found any time on his lap, and I think he's just about going to miss out on being able to make another one stick. It's going to be very close. Meanwhile, Karppinen is improving. Osterman has just started another lap, bailed out of the last one. Castorino What can he do? It's going to be super tight by the time he gets to the line. Will he make it? He does! Just about perfectly timed, so it's not over yet. Castorino is coming back for that pole position, and Carpenter, he's lost a little bit of improvement he had at the beginning of that lap. Let's see, what about other drivers? Manson in the middle of the track at the moment has found a 10th. We've got Valentin Barriers up by a couple of 10s as well. Drivers, you see the likes of Lobmeyer, Duacomp, they won't improve any further. Neither will Iemelo. Rainier also in the pits. Valentin Barrier, the Frenchman, number 16 car, trying to see what he can do. As he heads towards the line, it's going to be good enough to jump up a considerable amount in the order, but he will only start as high as P12, maybe even a bit further down, because there are other cars right now continuing to improve. Where is Carpenter? Carpenter not improving. He's a 10th down on his previous lap time. Castorino is a bit back and forth on his delta as well. He's pretty much square even. Osterman flying down the mountain at the moment in towards Forest Elbow, and he is going quickly. He's going to get a wonderful slipstream off one of the other McLarens in front. Is that Rotors? It is Rotors. Rotors not improving right now, but he might be about to give a gift of a slipstream, because look at this. Osterman tucked behind the rear wing of this McLaren, but how's it going to fare at the tail end of this lap? Coming in towards the chase now. Will Lewis Rotors get out of the way? He is going to just about get out of the way, so Osterman goes flying on through. He's gone flying so quickly, the camera can't even keep up with it. Carpenter won't improve. Castorino won't improve. It's all in the hands of Osterman. He wanted a race victory in the first round of the season. He was nowhere to be seen really in contention for Paul Ricard. But now, with the toe of the century, I think the McLaren driver, is he going to knock him off? No, he's not, by 300ths of a second. The final corner wasn't good enough for the McLaren, and I think Mateus could only improve him by a couple of tenths. Walsingham, a smidge of an improvement for him, but I think it is going to be Bentley glory for the first time in a long time. Have we seen that car be remotely competitive, and Karppinen taking it at the will of all of his fans and all of those in the chat that support him, and he has put it on pole around here at Bathurst Race Circuit. Fantastic stuff there from the Bentley driver by the smallest of margins, and even with the slipstream as well that Osterman got off Lewis Rotors, it wasn't good enough to take that position away from Carpenter. He starts on pole, and what a fantastic opportunity it is for him to take another victory around this circuit. He's demonstrated he's got the capability of doing it before, and right now that Bentley is looking very, very quick, but he's got a whole host of very quick people behind him that will be putting him under all sorts of pressure. So we'll have to see whether or not can he make it another victory around the mountain, or will it be one of those other drivers lurking behind him? He's got very fast McLarens. Castorino in that Aston Martin as well. Fantastic effort from him. Luke Whitehead is in the mix in that Porsche as well. You cannot rule out any one of these cars. This is what the Pro Series brings, and this is what the custom BOP that we've had dawn upon us for this season brings as well. We'll run through the starting grid in just a moment, but that just goes to show you how close the margins are around the circuit. And I tell you what, if qualifying is anything to go by, I think that we are going to be in for a treat with this race. We kind of would guarantee that anyway. It's the Case King Pro Series. You've mixed out with Bathurst and some of the greatest drivers on this platform. It's going to be a good one, but I think that just really goes to show just how good this one is looking to be. Team Carpenter makes it pole position in that Bentley, much to the delight of those in the chat supporting Mr. Carpet. Jacob Osterman starting on the front row once more. Fantastic consistency from the McLaren driver, as now Castorino in the Aston Martin starts P3. Lewis Rotors in P4 in the next one of the McLarens. Luke Whitehead in the Porsche, race winner from last week, starts P5. I think he'll be fairly content with that one, but of course 90 minutes of action around here, so he's going to be pretty hard pushed if he wants to maintain that one, because he was saying he was a little bit wary around this circuit. Grantis Correcas lines up P6. Gert Fischer for West Competition Racing starts in P7. George Boothby for the Veloce Esports McLaren starts in P8. Dario Iemelo in the end gets himself into P9 in the first of the Lamborghinis, as Aidan Walsingham rounds out a top 10. The man took P2 last time out at Paul Ricard. Did put a lot of pressure on Luke Whitehead for the win at one point, but didn't quite have enough in that car to take another victory in the Pro Series. Tinko van der Velde, rare occurrence for him to be outside the top 10, starts in P11 in the BMW. Matthias Kuhn starts in P12 with Valentin Barry, the first of the Ferrari 296s, starts in P13, and then Paul Lobmeyer in P14 in the Porsche. P15 will go to Marco Bischoff in that rather distinct looking Sprout livery car, of course, bringing over the colours of the new team that has been formed on the sim racing side. Florian Duicot, previous race winner around here as well. He starts in P16 in his BMW. Henrik Gamble starting in P17, next one of the Sprout cars, and then followed up by Mattia De Campo in the Ferrari 296. Watch out for those cars, because the 296 very likely to be extremely quick over the top of the mountain. Delivers a lot of confidence in the high-speed stuff, but could be a little bit spooky over the curbs and over the bumps, so it'd be a really interesting dynamic for all of that. Naldi and Manton round out the top 20, with Jardier, the man that started on pole position here last season, all the way down in 21st place, as he looks to contend this round a little bit on the sleepy side, but I'm sure that 90 minutes of action around Bathurst race circuit, that'll be sure to wake him up and give him the adrenaline that he needs. Renault Cooks followed by Frank Briat and Luke Addison take us to 24th position on the grid. Noah Reeder starts in 25th in the next of the Sprout Esports Lamborghinis. Angel Stroza, upon his return to the sim racing and ACC world, starts in 26th place. Fantastic to have him back with us. Sasha Vassner, the recently acquired German driver to the Unicorns of Love roster, starts in 27th place. Lois Rainier, in one of the many STL Esports McLarens we have on the grid, starts 28th. Joined on that position with Øystein Kolberg Brennan, the man from Norway. As rounding out the top 30, Leonardo Pagano in the number 33 Ferrari. Just behind him, we've got Jonas Koesfeld in the next of the Aston Martins. As it'll be very interesting to see how that car ends up faring in this race. Watch out for Castorino during the course of this one, because he is going to be very, very quick, I imagine, down the back of the mountain. Soltov 32nd place, with Philip Gamay in 33rd. Amir Hosseini only good enough for 34th position. Man, perhaps slightly overly hyped up, but perhaps he's going for an almost last to first challenge. Who knows? We know just how good he is, so keep an eye out for him in the race. Jan Drexler starts in 35th place, with Sean Tempest in 36th. Nikolai Polyakov in the next one, and I think the final of our Porsches. He starts 37th, as Dennis Wittschorker starts 38th, and then rounding out the grid, a man who's looking to, I think, just try to survive lap one and making it a Bentley sandwich from first to last in the field, is Samir Foch in the big bad Bentley. So we'll see how he gets on. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people watching him as well, hoping that he will have a good time. He's a man that unfortunately does seem to have quite a bit of bad luck from time to time, so he'll be hoping that he just keeps out of the chaos on the opening laps, manages to keep it all together and negotiate, what could be some pretty tricky times around here. Looking at the weather, at least for right now, for opening half an hour is all looking dry, so it'd be very interesting to see if we do end up running into any rain territory later on in this race. Of course, we've got longer stints playing out this time, and more opportunity for these drivers to experiment with the strategy. But Timo Karppinen, a man that took on the Bentley very much through being inspired by all of his supporters, his team, all of those that wanted him to take on this challenge. I think he must be pretty happy with the competitiveness of this car at this point. He's taken a pole position. He's been in contention at the front end of the grid at the opening round. Paul Ricard, a little bit trickier to put together, but he is looking like he could be a championship contender. There is no doubt. And of course, he knows how to get the job done around this circuit, and will be looking to make it a second race victory around here. Big thank you for all of the support and those who have been following in the chat. We're just 20 followers away from that 800 milestone. We may smidge our way over it tonight, but if you are enjoying the qualifying, and if you are buckled up and ready to watch fantastic 90 minutes of action around here at Bathurst Race Circuit, then do give the channel a follow, because this is the sort of action that you can find here at the LFM channel every single week with the Case King Pro Series, but Carpenter now making his way through the final part of the lap, and Kylo, one of the most dedicated members in the chat, doing a little bit of homework for me. I thought that Luke Whitehead gave me a little bit of an impression that there may be a bit more of a chance of rain than that, but it looks like it may be pretty small, so maybe a factor that these drivers aren't quite going to have to contend with in the way that I was anticipating. I'm sure that'll come as a relief to them, because I've got the darkness descended upon the mountain already that they're going to be contending with. I think we've got to go to Helicam for the opening of this one, because there's going to be lights ablaze and everything kicking off on the opening lap of this one, but for 90 minutes of action here at Bathurst Race Circuit, then can Carpenter make it 2 victories here in round number 3 of the Case King Pro Series, or would Jacob Osterman on the front row look to take his first win of the season? It's a very even start between them. I think it goes. Lewis Rota's already going around the outside of Castorino, but Carpenter holding on strong in towards turn 1. Castorino fighting back. Lewis Rota's dumped into the gravel. Luke Whitehead says thank you very much, and the McLaren's getting boxed in, and it's going to be Gert Fischer charging up almost 3-4 wide as they head up to the top of the hill for the first time. I need to keep an eye on this, because Jacob Osterman trying to see if he can head in towards P1 as they get towards turn 2, trying to get to that inside line, but he can't do it. Strong defense from Carpenter, but does he get it stopped in time? He's gone very wide, and Osterman sensing an opportunity, perhaps looking towards the inside line as they head up towards the cutting for the very first time on the opening lap, and there's yellow flags already, but I think just the one car, it's the number 36. I'm not quite sure who that is. We're trying to catch up with that. That's Renato Coots, the Estonian driver, has already had it go wrong for him at turn 2, but it is Carpenter that just about holds on to the lead. Osterman in hot pursuit, Castorino P3, Whitehead already gaining position in P4, and then a gap down towards Correcas, who's only half a second behind, as he pushes on in the McLaren. He got extremely close to the concrete as they make their way in towards Skyline for the first time. Got to be careful on these opening laps, heavy with fuel. Tyres are not going to be up to temperature, and there's another yellow flag. I think there's been a lot of action. Chaos down here, big pile up. Oh my goodness! And there's a big follow-up of Renato Coots has collected those cars there. I think we're just about safe at the pointy end of the grid to try to catch up with what chaos took place down here. Further down the field, this is what can happen on the opening lap of this race as they all started to charge their way up. Oh, somebody went very heavily into the wall. I think that surely is what's going to spark it all off. There was a big follow-up and just got bunched up. And, oh my goodness, and one car almost over on its roof by the time they got through there. Absolute chaos in the opening lap, and they were about to see Renato Coots come flying on in, and I'm sure that there'll be a few drivers, and the stewards may even have something to say about the medical helicopter required. Absolutely. Thankfully, in the world of sim racing, whilst you can occasionally end up with a bit of a dislocated finger or something like that, George Boothby, I think, very much knows all about that. Generally speaking, it's a little bit on the safer side. So everyone's surviving just about okay in that one, but big crash at the tail end of the grid. But meanwhile, Carpenter opening up that gap to 0.6 of a second now as Castorino applying the pressure to Jacob Osterman as they battle on for P2. Correcas, Gert Fischer, George Boothby, all very close together as well. And there's a side-by-side bit of action between Noah Reader and Luke Addison. They head up towards turn 2. You can see the Lamborghini on the inside line, but cut across the nose is the South African driver as he makes his way up into 21st position as they continue to go up in towards the cutting. And the mountain sees these blades of lights descend upon it once more. Fantastic views as you head up through this part of the circuit to see. We get a fantastic series of camera shots through here. Look at that. There are not many circuits that will give you action and views like that. The sense of speed as they head past the concrete, trying to weave their way through these margins. Bit of a mistake from the McLaren in the background, but just about manages to keep it all together. Someone's got off in the grass in the background. I think that was Matteo Naldi. Oh my goodness, what is happening there? He's all over the asphalt. Somehow manages to just about keep it together. And the Ferrari, I can't like saying, they might be quite planted around this circuit. Not looking very planted at all. We've got 4 cars, excuse me, have another go. 5 cars in the pits in the opening couple of laps. Those surely involved with that lap 1 incident and a lot of damage on board those cars. I don't see anyone that has gone for DNF just yet. Manson and Vitschoker are already back out of the pits, but there could well be some retirements already. Meanwhile, Carpenter, Osterman and Castorino locked together. You can see Luke Whitehead just a little bit of a drift of this opening 3. Hasn't quite been able to hold the pace with the Bentley, McLaren and the Aston Martin, but
he will make up his lap time over the top of the mountain. And sometimes that confidence being able to deliver speed is where it's really going to end up counting. So you will see this dynamic back and forth right now. We'll go on board the rear diffuser of Jacob Osterman. This Timo Karppinen is very quick through turn 1. He opens up that gap by a couple of tenths every single time. Osterman actually set the fastest lap of the race last time around, but only about 100th quicker than Karppinen. Karppinen and Castorino set identical lap times. So these guys, as well as having fine margins between one another, they are very, very close when it comes to overall pace in the race as well. As I can make a little bit of an adjustment to the in-game audio if it is on the quiet side. Levels-wise, it looks kind of okay, but if other people think it could be bumped up a little bit, then I will have a look on that front as we check back in on the fight with Gert Fischer battling amongst two Veloce McLarens. It's Grantis Carreras just ahead of him and George Boothby in hot pursuit behind, and once again they come flying in towards the dipper, trying to judge your braking point and the margins. You see how quickly it can go wrong in qualifying as you clatter from one wall to another if you just get it ever so slightly wrong. But they just about managed to thread their way through there. Castorino, not a good lap from him whatsoever. 7 tenths lost through the last part of the lap, but he's 1.2 seconds behind Osterman. So Karppinen and Osterman now looking dialed in. Castorino with a little bit of a mistake, as I'll check back in because we've got Grantis Carreras maybe trying to look to make a move on Lewis Roten. We go on board the front splitter of the McLaren as he weaves his way through 21 and 22. But can't quite get close enough. Osterman once again very quick in the final sector, closes that gap back down from 6 tenths to 3, but Karppinen may be able to extend that as they head up towards turn 2 once more. And whether or not the zoom and the vrooms are coming through from the game, if in doubt, I can always do a little bit of soundboarding from myself. Don't you worry, everybody. We'll make sure we get engine noises one way or another. Accuracy just may vary ever so slightly. But heading in towards the 7th minute of this race, fantastic action already. Generally speaking, relatively clean amongst the field. As look at this pack further down the order. As oh my goodness, someone at the pointy end of the grid. Who is that? No, excuse me. No, it's not Renault Coupe. Oh, thank goodness. I thought we'd had a horrific catastrophe for the front positions. The man that I think was going to get lapped by Timo Karppinen and Jacob Osterman at that moment, he's decided, as a result, he's going to have to let everybody through. Somebody's making a little bit of a mistake there. Luke Whitehead, I think that is, side by side for a moment with one of the McLarens, manages to keep it all together. Oh my goodness, look at the sparks flies. There is nothing that looks quite spectacular, I don't think, as that series of corners in the night around Bathurst when you have these cars. The sparks and the sense of speed, it's just every sim racer and motorsport enthusiast's dream as they head through there. In towards the dipper once more they go. You can see Gert Fischer applying the pressure to the back of Grantis Carreras. He's dropped a little bit of time to Lewis Roten. Lewis Roten's a little bit wide, though in towards Forest Elbow. Went a bit deep there, but I don't think he'll be under too much pressure on this occasion. Someone, though, who's lost a position, Henrik Gamble, has made a mistake there. We'll try to catch up with him in the camera. Wouldn't mind switching across. He's gone very deep in towards Forest Elbow. I don't know if there was contact with the wall at any point, but it's allowed both Jardier and Mattia De Campo to get through. Jardier may be looking to even make a move on the Ferrari because that McLaren very quick down the back straight. 296 has to go defensive. Bit of a late move towards the inside for Jardier, but he can't get there under the braking zone, and the 296 survives for another day. And De Campo will stay P17. Karppinen still keeping back the McLaren of Osterman at the pointy end of the grid. And in actual fact, extending that advantage now almost up to a second. 59.8, fastest lap of the race from Osterman. That is astonishing in these conditions. We have darkness and we've got heavy fuel on board these cars, and that 59, doing a 59 around Bathurst race circuit in itself is a difficult achievement, let alone in the early stages of a race like this. Fantastic stuff, and that shows you how hard these guys are pushing. Advantage was the way of the Bentley last time round, though, by a tenth and a half. And yes, Karppinen has managed to escape DRS, an aspect of his race I'm sure that he was incredibly terrified by. What a fantastic spectacle that would be if Formula 1 ever went to Bathurst race circuit. I think for various acceptable reasons, there's a good chance that we'll never see it, but one could dream. But I'm quite happy with the action we've got in the world of GT3 that we have here, and also, of course, all the other championships that head towards this part of the world as well. We get fantastic action every single year around this circuit, virtual or real. And it just doesn't matter because it's just so good. Luke Whitehead kicking up the dust in towards the dipper. They go back. Porsche seemingly to struggle a little bit at this point in the race. As you see drivers trying to just tap the brake, get a little bit of deceleration before they head over the crest. And then back through Forest Elbow on the power once more. Let's see, what is the straight line speed difference like between the McLaren as we hear that fantastic flat six roaring its way down the back straight. But he's got the McLaren of Lewis Roters in hot pursuit, gaining all the time. Roters, will he go to the inside? Luke White gets defended, almost contact as they head in towards the braking zone. But the McLaren of Lewis Roters down the inside, side by side on the exit, but he's chopped the nose off from Luke Whitehead. Last round's race winner down to P5. And he's got Grant Correcas, his teammate, applying the pressure in towards the final corner. But now he's having to defend from Kurt Fischer, the fancy to move around the outside. BMW trying to go around the outside. Surely that won't work, because now, look at this, we've got George Boothby trying to get involved in this as well. It's almost 3 wide as they head towards turn 1, and position swapping all the time. Marco Bischoff trying to make a move as well in the background. Fischer onto the grass on the exit. Luke Whitehead just for a moment gets a little bit of a breather. He's applying the pressure back on the Lewis Rotors. Now it's Correcas with George Boothby, who has just about managed to slot his way in between his teammates and the BMW as they head up the hill. Someone else is under pressure, Tingo van der Velde from Darai Emelo. He cuts back across to the racing line. Moves will not be made on this occasion from through into turn 2. But what about some of these other cars as well? De Campo versus Lobmeyer. An attempt was made, although positions now being lost by De Campo. Giardier manages to get the move in towards the cutting. Fantastic racing between those two as they continue to fly, but not as much as Teemu Karppinen. 59.7 on the last lap, and a 1.7 second gap between himself and Osterman. That car loving life here at the mountain, and Karppinen, a man that's done the deed here before at getting the job done. So we'll see what can he bring to round number 3. Can he make himself very much a championship contender? I'm sure all of those that are supporting him would be delighted to see that Bentley contending towards the top again. It's a car that has a soft spot, I think, in everybody's hearts. It sounds great. It's a fun one to drive, and it's fantastic to see it's back being competitive at the top level of ACC, and the Finnish driver doing a fantastic job right now at extracting that place. Drag race ablaze now as they head down towards the chase. Once more, Luke Whitehead under the rear wing of Lewis Rotors, but surely just a little bit too far away from the McLaren to make a move on this occasion. Someone, though, that may be able to make a move. Here comes Giardier towards the inside of Paul Lobmeyer. Down through the chase. That's extremely brave. Lobmeyer still there on the inside. A little bit of contact between the pair of them. But Giardier, the man that took pole position and was in with a chance of race victory last season, comes on through, and he goes up into P16, and he's bringing De Campo with him, who sides one up the inside of Lobmeyer. Unsuspecting was the Porsche. He's got a fantastic run out of the final corner, though, and heading up in towards turn 1, but I don't think the Porsche is going to be able to get alongside, and surely with the slipstream from that McLaren in front, will not be able to make a move. 2 seconds now, the gap between Karppinen and Osterman, as Amadeo Castorino just a tenth of a second behind Jacob Osterman in the McLaren, who's dropping away in terms of pace. He's still doing fantastic lap times, but right now Castorino just looking that little bit more confident inside the cockpit of that Lamborghini. And speaking of which, let's go on board with this car. Another thunderous V8, and we can see what it's like to try to follow through this part of the circuit. It's one thing's doing qualifying, and when you've got another car in front of you and you're having to push hard, you get a little bit less of a view of all of your reference points. And of course, you've got to be adapting every single lap to the track grip, what the tyres are giving you, and you've really got to respond and listen to the car, because otherwise, if you don't, it can go wrong so quickly. McLaren just seems a little bit quicker through the likes of McPhillamys, pretty even between the pair of them down in towards the S's and the Dipper. See what it's like between Castorino and Osterman as they head through Forest Elbow. Good exit from Osman there. Pretty good on that occasion. Oh no, I think there's been a big crash over the top of the mountain, and that is Inestrosa, who I think has gone into the wall. He's gathered himself up fairly quickly, but the man from Chile has rejoined the Case King Pro Series grid. And sim racing, I think he's had a bit of a moment here. Is it in towards McPhillamy? He's almost into the concrete there, then coming through the fast left-hander. What happens? It's not going to be there. Almost a bit of an instant for Lamborghini behind. It's just going to be the same mistake as we saw before. It is, and loses the back end. And there's a series of taps. Luke Addison gets a bump through there as well. One of the Lamborghinis loses position. And then there was the McLaren that sides his way up the inside. But that is going to be a considerable amount of damage on board Inestrosa's car. So not what he would have wanted. Meanwhile, Castorino unable to close in the gap last time around to Jacob Osterman. And so is going to have to try to wait for another opportunity. In actual fact, trying to see if he can get himself close to the back of that McLaren. You can see he's very good on the run-up towards Turn 2. That slipstream helping him out considerably, but Carpenter still lapping in the 59s. Fantastic pace being shown by him. Grantis Correcas and George Boothby flying as well. And the Bouncing Castle into death. Yeah, that's certainly an alternative name that could be provided for that part of the circuit. It's it's definitely one of the scariest parts, and it can go wrong so quickly. And unfortunately, Inestrosa falling victim to that. He has kept on going, and I'm sure we'll be looking to try to repair that damage perhaps in the pit stop. And who knows, maybe a bit lucky, maybe got away a little bit easier than it looked at first glance, but certainly far from ideal. We saw Jardier's hopes of a race win completely disappear at a different part of the circuit. It's down into where we're coming into right now. Forest Elbow just went a little bit deep under brakes, back end completely pendulumed on him, and then went straight into the wall. Spun himself around, actually had a very nice recovery, a very awkward part of the circuit. Didn't manage to get out of the way of anybody, so no one else was compromised, thankfully, in all of that. But, of course, very disappointing way for his race to play out there. Castorino, once again, applying the pressure to the back of the McLaren, but he can't make a move on this occasion. What about someone a bit further down? Mateus Good trying to close into the back of Valentin Barrier in the Ferrari. There's a white flag out for Dario Iemolo. Don't think anything too dramatic has happened to the Lamborghini driver. Castorino, though, got a great run out of turn 22, and he's really hounding the back of the McLaren. Now you can see Carpenter in the Bentley just up ahead. Meanwhile, swapping a position further down, as that was Frank Briat that got it all wrong heading in towards 21, and has dropped positions to Ida and Inestrosa in the process. He now goes down 23rd place. I don't think we'll have a chance to look at the replay, though, because we've got it all kicking off in the fight for P2 right now, and this will really be helping out Carpenter and extend his lead. Still lapping in the 59s, but this McLaren, it's a weapon in a straight line, and Castorino's just not quite quick enough as they head up the hill in order to try and make an overtake. So Osman still P2 for the time being. Look at some of these gaps, though. You've got Whitehead under pressure from Correcas, George Boothby, Fisher, Tinko van der Velde now making his way in towards the top 10. And that is a position that we are not used to being able to, we're used to being able to see him extract a lot of pace, but the BMW may be just struggling a little bit. He won't be too keen on the fact, though, that Gert Fischer is ahead of him. Tinko van der Velde, he'll want to have at least been a dominant force in terms of the BMW, but right now he's got a man that's going one better than him, and currently he's trying to go two better because he is hounding the back of George Boothby as they head in towards the dipper once more. Such a scary sequence of corners. We'll go on board once more. I know we're going to have a lot of on-boards in this race, but how can you not? The action just looks so good as George Boothby locks to the rear of his teammate. His two teammates in front of him. Whitehead defending from Correcas. Correcas has a little bit more breathing space down to George Boothby. And it's Gert Fischer in this BMW trying to see how much time can he gain. I don't think he's the one that's going to be making a move, though, on this occasion. It's all going to be about Correcas. If the camera can catch up, oh my goodness, you almost saw Correcas diving towards the grass. In actual fact, he's had a major lift there because he had such a big moment and a bit of contact and hard racing between the two teammates and almost taking all three of them out in one go. That could have gone spectacularly wrong. But now it's George Boothby applying pressure to the back of Grantis Correcas. I think he should just about survive okay. I really want to see what happens. Let's go on board with Correcas' McLaren. because that was super close to the rear of George Boothby, and he really had to back out as they went in towards the chase. There is not a car's width there to be playing with. Oh my goodness! And lightning reactions from Luke Whitehead to keep it all together. And Granted, Correcas ended up being the one that was completely spooked by that and had George Boothby all over his gearbox. We'll go back to the main race in just a moment, because George Boothby, I can tell you, is continuing to hound his teammate. They are almost inseparable as they head through the middle sector. We'll go back to live pictures now, because George Boothby has got Correcas in his sights at the moment. Gert Fischer, Tingo van der Velde, Iemelo, Walsingham, all in this train of cars. Is much simpler at the pointier end of the grid. Karppinen leads by 3.3 seconds. Osterman ahead of Castorino by 3/4 second, and the Rotors, Whitehead, over a second apart from one another. But this train all the way from P6 down to almost P13, because Valentine Barry and Matthias Kuhn really are not that far away in the grand scheme of things. It is a mighty, mighty sequence of corners. We'll go on board with the front splitter of Ada Walsingham. We get a fantastic view. Look at these cars snaking their way through the middle sector. It's just such a good series of shots. Any camera angle really that you choose on any one of these cars is just going to be incredible. But as he closes the distance in towards Forest Elbow, it's Lamborghini versus Lamborghini. A little bit of contact with the wall potentially. Oh, I'm not quite sure. It could have been a bit of a squirrely exit. And we'll see. Luke Whitehead definitely okay on this occasion. 3/4 second the gap between himself and Correcas. But this train of cars, anything could happen between them. They're all fairly evenly matched in a straight line. You can see the deltas not really moving around. It's Walsingham that's the closest in this pack. Tinko van der Velde looking pretty handy behind Gert Fischer as well, because even performance between the two BMWs is going to be tricky to make a move. And we've only had 20 minutes of this race. This is going to be the action. This is going to be the chaos all the way to the end that we can look forward to. I can guarantee you that. As Matthias Kuhn and Valentine Barrier almost swapping around. I think they have swapped around. And we'll try to catch out Matthias Kuhn. What happened there? Definitely something between those two cars, I think. So we'll just try to see Castorino. I think he's going to be too far away. And I do want to try to see if we can capture what happened with Valentine Barrier just a moment ago. So heading down, so this is looking at Matthias Kuhn, and you can see Valentine Barrier gets completely boxed in, and Matthias Kuhn said, "Thank you very much," sends one up the inside from downtown. I don't think Valentine, I don't think either of them really expected the position to play out like they did. It just wasn't looking like it was going to be an overtake that was on at any point, but a mega send from the Lamborghini driver. He's dropped Valentine immediately as a result. Fantastic driving from the pair of them for Valentine's awareness as well to lead for space. So a big dive down the inside and just about making it stick, but he has got Valentine immediately on his gearbox one more, so he has not got away with that one just yet. Half second between Castorino and Osterman as the McLaren driver continues to just about hold on to P2. Laps last time around evening out a little bit. That Aston Martin though, Castorino looking very quick, 59.9, fastest lap from the Italian driver so far, his first 59 of the race, and just a tenth or so quicker than some of those in front of him. So maybe not all said and done just yet, as this train of cars continues to fight very, very closely. Correcas has once again closed in towards the back of Luke Whitehead. He's got a bit of a better time run this time around. Did he look to go one on the inside? He does. Luke Whitehead gives him the space. He's got George Boothby to worry about in a minute. He's trying to go for the over and under on his teammate. That's not going to work out, as Valentine Barrier and Matthias could also swap in positions. Valentine Barrier's got the move back. Florian Ducop, Marco Bischoff is around. Yellow flags ablaze. Florian Ducop is off as well. George Boothby trying to go around the outside of Luke Whitehead. He's made the move stick. But my goodness, it's chaos once again in this part of the race. Renault Coots, I'm afraid, had a terrible start to the race. He is effectively out of it altogether, but we have a lot to be catching up on by the looks of it, because George Boothby and Correcas have both made their way past Luke Whitehead. You can see this is the setup. We know that he gets it done in the end, but whereabouts is Marco Bischoff? And Marco Bischoff just loses it by himself by the looks of it, and a very rare mistake. Florian Ducop comes to a stop on the grass. I don't know, was there contact further on or earlier on through the chase? I'm not quite sure. Florian Ducop now going very slowly, maybe going to concede a position back to Marco Bischoff. So there could have been contact between the pair of them. I think we're just about to chime back in with that now. And you can see Marco Bischoff has just got the position back over Florian Durkop, so I'm assuming something must have happened through the chase between them, and then just so much speed on board that Lamborghini. Could not get it stopped, and has ended up going around at the apex. Very odd incident, but inside the top 10, look at these cars as they fly their way through. Koreca's now trying to make a break and close in towards Lewis Roters. George Boothby in tow. Whitehead continuing to be under pressure. He has Fischer, Van der Velde, Iemelo, Walsingham all in tow. The battle may only be stretching down as far as P11 at this point in time, but I think that's just about... I think that's enough. We've got enough cars. So yellow flag for someone else. That was the number 31, I do believe. I can't quite see who that is now. But I do know that Amir Hosseini is in the pit lane. So the man that I thought that could be able to put a cat amongst the pigeons and really do something special in this one, unfortunately, is he even going to see it to the flag by the looks of it, as Gert Fischer once again applying the pressure to the back of Luke Whitehead, and George Boothby is looking mighty, mighty quick in his McLaren right now. He's 3 tenths behind Korekas, the pair of them running away from their Porsche teammate, last week's race winner of Luke Whitehead. As checking further down the order, you can see this scrapper's in Astroza, who of course is running with a bit of damage on board his car, has Marco Bischoff, who had that incident just a lap ago, all over the back of the Porsche, and he's got Florian Durkop in the BMW in hot pursuit as well. We know this Porsche is not going to fare the greatest as they climb the hill once more in terms of a straight line capability. Let's see, can the Lamborghini... It's a good run though out of turn 1. Inestrosa might have just about protected himself. White flag for Korekas, and I think a little bit of a mistake through turn 2 potentially. Looked very, very iffy through there, and I think he has just about kept it together, but did he make contact with the wall? He's got George Boothby hounding him right now, and let's see, as apparently 5-second penalty for Korekas as well. Well, I haven't even checked in with the stewards yet. There's just been too much going on. The cameraman, I don't know where on earth he's looking, and I think we'll try to cut for a different view. Let's see Korekas as they head in towards turn 2. How does he fare through there? Oh, it was just very deep. Thankfully, he did actually just about keep it all together. White flags actually for a lot of the drivers in that trade. But we will try to catch up on all of the penalties in just a moment. It's Gert Fischer. Gert Fischer is around, I do believe. Gert Fischer's made a mistake. Oh, and there's contact between himself and Walsingham, but that's Valentine Barrier. Nowhere to go. Sandwich there, and there's chaos in the background. Jardier's involved in it as well. Lobmeyer, Walsingham, Barrier, De Campo, all losing positions, and that is how quickly it can go wrong on the mountain, and damage for all of those cars. Disaster amongst those drivers, and I think it all started with the likes of Gert Fischer. We've got a drag race now between Lobmeyer and Mattia De Campo. We'll try to scroll back on the replay, but we've got 2 wide, De Campo and the Porsche. Lobmeyer heading in towards 21. It's going to go the way of the Ferrari. Vanti Mara chopping across the nose of Jardia then, but what on earth happened? A few moments ago, Gert Fischer's into the pits, and it's been an almighty incident out top of the mountain. We'll try to catch up with everything that just took place there. So this is Gert Fischer heading through the S's and in towards the Dipper at this point in time, and confirmation there, so there was contact between Durkop and Mavics, we just couldn't quite see, and oh my goodness, very unusual bit of contact there, bounces from wall to wall, and then heading in towards Forest Elba. We're going to see from this angle now, there's the contact, Gert Fischer gets away, and then Walsingham just almost sent to the hounds by comparison, and just the chaos and destruction that took place, unfortunately all under the tree, so we can't really see anything, but Walsingham was actually still around, and then it was all kicking off as they went down towards the chase. A more mighty series of battles between those cars. It's still kicking off between the likes of Lobmeyer and Henrik Gamble now through in towards the cutting. Lobmeyer's going to come out on top of that one in the end, but Lobmeyer dropping positions as well. He might be suffering quite a bit of damage on board his car. It's difficult to tell. More medical helicopters are definitively required. There is no doubt about that. My goodness. There's white flags for Inestrosa and Frank Briat a moment ago, but I don't think anything too much happened between them in the end. You say about the gap for Timo. Timo, it's not the easiest of gaps because it has actually been chipped away at the last couple of laps. Osterman, for the first time in a while, he's got the gap under 3 seconds between himself and Carpenter. There is a little bit of a mistake from Innestroza, and he's got all of the SDL Esports McLaren on his gearbox now, and I think we could very much be about to see a move from the SDL car of Frank Briat. Let's see, number 37 car, how much straight line speed capability has this number got? As we head now, that McLaren really starts to pick up the pace down the inside in towards the chase. It's going to turn into the outside by the time they get towards the braking zone. Very brave here. George Boothby and Luke Whitehead going side by side as well. A little bit of contact between these two. And the Frank Briat, the Frenchman, has to take to the grass. The Mercedes almost going off behind. The Porsche's got off on the exit as well. And we'll try to catch up with what happened with George Boothby too. As the McLaren defends up the inside in towards Murray's corner. And just about manages to keep Sasha Vasta behind in that Unicorns of Love car. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find out what happened between George Boothby and Luke Whitehead over here because they're still going side by side up towards turn 2. Luke Whitehead not done with trying to reclaim these positions just yet, but now it's very, very close between these drivers. Whitehead almost pushing George Boothby along, who looked like he was one making progress on the last lap. 2:08 for Luke Whitehead, half a second quicker than the two cars that sit in front of him. Of course, his teammates as well. He won't want to race them too hard, but we have seen these drivers, they don't make it too easy with one another, that's for sure. Jan Drexler, Pagano side by side in towards turn 2. BMW sacrifice towards the outside line. Is not easy to hold position there because the camera is so important on the inside of turn 2. He's trying a big oversteer moment. The Ferrari went in the wall. Pagano tapped the wall through the cussing, which I think just about gave enough for Drexler whilst he was going sideways to squeeze his way through. We've barely had half an hour running yet. We've still got 60 minutes of racing left to go, everybody. And this is just going to continue all the way through. His contact with the wall. Heavy contact for Solstov as they went in towards the run of McPhillimies. But he managed to get away with that relatively cleanly in the end. Pit window will be opening up in the near future. And my goodness, a big thank you once again and a warm welcome to all of you that are new to this channel. This is the Case King Pro Series, this is LFM, and this is sort of incredible action you can expect every single week. We are just 12 followers away from 800. If you are enjoying all of the action, be sure to follow the channel where all this good stuff takes place, as Castorino once again has reeled in Jacob Osterman for that P2 spot. The Aston Martin looking quick in a race trim. It was looking good in qualifying trim as well, and he's really got a very good run as heading up towards turn 2. Osterman usually so good on the exit of turn 1, but he does manage to protect that position once more from the Italian driver. But you can see Timo Carpenter, there he is, just flashing past the camera in the number 9 Bentley, has not been able to escape, and his lap times, they're there or thereabouts, and it really does ebb and flow around this circuit. Once you're in the groove, you can really hit some special lap times, but if you just lose a little bit of confidence, that's when it can all start to go wrong. We'll go on board with the championship leader, the reigning champion of the Pro Series, a man that dominated in his Audi last season, and a man that he is battling right now in the championship. At the top of the standings is just ahead of him, Luke Whitehead in the Porsche, trying to charge on, but he's dropped 7/10 from his teammates there, who in those McLarens have started to run away. The cracks in the Porsche have started to just open up a little bit more, and Tico van der Velde sniffing the back of that car, trying to see if there's an opportunity. Look at the way it accelerates out of the dipper though. That's what the Porsche is so good at. Low cornering speed, agility, and acceleration in that early phase is just unmatched from the naturally aspirated car. White flag out for Noah Reed. I think he was a little bit slow through the middle part of the lap, but nothing too catastrophic for the German driver. See, this BMW not as quick down the back straight as I thought it might have been, so he really does need to see right at the very end is when he starts to build up the speed, but he does need to be really locked on to a couple of tenths of a second gap between himself and Whitehead if he wants to open up an opportunity in towards that part of the lap. Checking in on Valentin Barrier. as the two Ferrari 296s between himself and Ocampo battling for the position just outside of top 10. There was a quick squabble there on the time board. I don't think anything actually happened, but it just goes to show you how close IMLO is. You know, Tinko van der Velde, he may be the aggressor right now, trying to get past Luke Whitehead, who does look a little bit vulnerable at this stage of the race, but he can't, you know, he has to be mindful of IMLO in that Lamborghini behind, because he will pounce immediately if an opportunity opens up for him. We'll try to check in on the penalties as well. There's been a lot of incidents involved, and we've got a drive-through penalty for the number 36 car. I have a feeling that could be for someone that retired already. Yeah, I can't see them, unfortunately, on my screen, so I don't quite know who that was for, but that was for that, I believe, the multi-car incident, potentially on the very first lap. A stop-and-go 10-second time penalty for both the number 34 and the number 11. They've also left the server, so I don't know who they so big consequences for not having the most cautious of beginnings of this race. A 5-second time penalty for the number 2 car, so that, I believe, was for Grantis Correcas, and that was for forcing another car off track. That was the number 29 car, seemingly. And who were they squabbling with in the number 29? And that's also a car that I can no longer see in the server. Fantastic. White flags ablaze between Sasha Vassner and Frank Briat. Almost, I think, having a bit of issue in the middle sector. You can see chopping and changing all the time. Defensive. Oh, that's a mistake. Mistake from Frank Briat, who's gone straight into the barrier. Colbo Brenham's going to say thank you very much and make his way through. We'll try to catch a replay of what happened there. He was under all sorts of pressure by the looks of it already. We'll go on board. So this is on board the McLaren as he heads in towards the S's. And, oh, you can see big moment there. So that's why Vasta had to slow up. He didn't make a mistake. He was taking avoiding action. And unfortunately, it's only going to go from bad to worse as we make our way in towards Forest Elbow. And... okay. In actual fact, I thought he had a calamity in towards the entry there. In actual fact, just being incredibly mindful and actual very conscientious driving there from Frank Briat. Not quite clearly, not an ideal situation for the Frenchman, but dealt with that very maturely, I think, and managed to make sure that there was no one else that got caught up there. Of course, the car is extremely difficult to drive when you get that much damage on board, but big unfortunate error for the Frenchman. 15-second time penalty for the number 22. That is Florian Duakop as the pit lane is now open. Oh, did Frank Briat... Oh, I've got a horrible feeling that he may have entered the pit lane a smidge too early before the pit window was technically open. So I'm not convinced if this will actually count towards his compulsory pit stop. For those that are new to the Case King Pro Series, we do have a mandatory pit stop in all of these races with a central pit window, a 20-minute window in which you can do that. And I have a horrible feeling he may have missed it by just a few seconds. That is actually all the penalties that have been dished out so far. And we are actually, we the stewards, who always do a fantastic job managing to filter their way through all the chaos this race, no exception whatsoever, they are pretty much up to date with all of the action that has taken place. Great stuff from them, of course. A lot of hard work goes on behind the scenes. I'm just the nut job who has the joy of shouting into the microphone through all of this action. I've got the easy bit. Tinko van der Velde applying the pressure to Luke Whitehead, but he can't make a move stick, and he's still got IMLO hunting around the back of his Porsche, trying to see if there's any opportunity that he can make. He looks confident on the brakes as well. You can see George Boothby almost pushing Grantis Correcas in the other McLaren along as they head towards the start-finish line. One more down. IMLO again showing his nose, just trying to make sure that Tinko is aware that, you know, if you start to go wide at any moment, I will very much be looking for an opportunity. Noah Reeder comes into the pits and maybe looking, trying to go for a big undercut strategy, maybe repair a bit of damage on board that car as well. We'll have to see how other cars look to play that one out as we look back to Tinko, as there's a bit of side-by-side action. I think that must be cars further down the order, if I'm not mistaken. I think that might be Jardier that was very close with Dennis Wietschalker. Then I think Jolly has come into the pits after that. Of course, that big incident, unfortunately, he ends up getting involved in. Just really did not have much in the way of places to go. Luke Anderson and Marco Bischoff and Henrik Gamble all going very close to one another when they got towards turn 2, and I think the Ferrari driver has not come out in that very well at all. We'll have a look at the replay, and you see we've got on board the rear diffuser of the Ferrari driver now, I think, is going to make a mistake in towards turn 2 and open up some opportunities. I think there's a yellow flag for Iemelo, and there's the contact with the wall. And so Luke Anderson does drop just the one position in the end to Henrik Gamble, actually. Marco Bischoff already passed that car, but there is drama inside the top 10 because Iemelo, hard charging, hard pushing towards the back of Tinko van der Velde, has made a big mistake. He is damaged, and he has Matthias Kuhn all over his gearbox, the Belgian driver, trying to go around the outside in towards the chase. It's a scary place to do it. I don't know if he's got enough of an overlap. He looked for a switch one way, then the other. He can't make it stick, but Tinko van der Velde can make the move stick on Luke Whitehead. He's used the greater straight line speed, but now the Porsche trying to look for an opportunity back down in towards Murray's corner, but he can't get alongside. And Tinko van der Velde, the reigning champ, the man that leads the championship standings, gets himself up into P7 then, as Matthias Kuhn still applying the pressure to the back of Dario Iemelo, who's trying to go inside, but Matthias Kuhn's got there faster, down the inside of turn 1, almost contacted. Oh, a little bit of shoulder barging and flashing of the lights there from Iemelo. Not too happy with that one. Matthias Kuhn makes his way through, but will the stewards have something to say about that? Unfortunately, I think we will have missed now the mistake that Iemelo ends up making. But expect that Lamborghini to start to drop back considerably quickly, because once the mountain strikes your car, it is usually well, I mean, if you're lucky, it's still got all the same pieces in relatively the same order. It's just they're significantly more battered and bruised. If you're unlucky, one of your wheels is probably on your roof and something like that. So it's very much one where there is such a small margin of error, and the extent at which you can lose time is so big around this circuit, because as soon as that damage gets on board, this sequence of corners, it's high commitment. You're on the edge of grip of what these tyres can provide, of what confidence you have in the car to be able to push it around this circuit. And as soon as you get damage on board your car, it is extremely difficult to keep up the momentum around here without just being that bit more on the caution side. Florian Duakop, a man that perhaps knows that balance a little bit all too well, and how it goes when you end up going over the limit. Applying pressure onto the back of onto the back of Addison now, who of course contact with the wall not too long ago, and I think the 296 may be vulnerable to being overtaken here in the next part of the lap, as they now make their way down towards the chase once more. See what the BMW can do. Iemelo, is he coming into the pits? No, he's just running a little bit slowly through in towards 21 and 22. As now BMW hot on the heels of the Ferrari 296 down towards the outside line. Ferrari 296 on the inside, manages the whole position for the time being, and ends up getting it all together, but he is going to dive into the pits. Actually doesn't want anything else to do with the BMW losing time and track position in the end, and so Florian Duakop makes his way up into P15. Bit of an unusual pit entry, actually. We're trying to catch on board with somebody as they make their way through that part of the circuit, because it's a very tricky one. Very easy for you to make a mistake. That's almost a stupid sort of pointless comment, is it? It's very easy to make a mistake all around this circuit, but the pit lane entry is almost deliberately stupid in terms of how complicated it is. It's kind of like the Singapore sling, if anyone remembers, in the first iteration of the Singapore Grand Prix circuit in Formula 1, we've kind of got that left, right, left. You've basically got that with slightly less ambitiously large curbs, which is about the only saving grace, I think, about the pit entry here. But it is very easy to get it wrong. It does kind of force you to back off the speed as you make your way to that part of the circuit, but it's something that can still throw issues around here. Speaking of issues around here, whilst the gaps around some of our grid have temporarily calmed down for just a moment, I do want to tell a little bit of a story. A man that I saw actually followed tonight. I don't know if he's still with us in the chat, but Michi Tauscher, who I saw joining, a big warm welcome to the LFM channel. Of course, a fantastic driver on the world of ACC. I mean, he's fantastic, full stop, incredibly quick. But unfortunately, I do believe it's Michi Tauscher that's had one of the most renowned moments around Bathurst race circuit in the championship. I imagine a couple of years ago or so now. Was leading the race for his team in the closing stage. We now see George Boothby and Lewis Rotos come into the pits. I'll try to see, can I catch it? There we go. There's the pit lane entry for George Boothby. Look at that. That's just nonsensical through there. The mountain just continuously throwing additional challenges that these drivers arguably do not need. It's a fantastic sequence, but spooky if you get it wrong. But Michi Tauscher leading a race for his team, had a comfortable gap, was celebrating in towards the final corner on the last lap, and unfortunately, as these drivers at the very, very top end of the spectrum for this race, for this platform, you know, they are such talented and they're making all these adjustments to their car all the time. You'll see them having mappings for their TC, their ABS, anything that they can get their hands on, brake bicycles too, and they'll be doing that during the course of a qualifying lap, during the race, as the balance front to rear starts to change, as degradation kicks in. So these drivers, they tend to have these buttons to hand. Unfortunately, a strong lesson learnt in making sure those buttons are placed in an easy to access but potentially not too easy to access location, as unfortunately Michi on the exit the final corner unknowingly had his TC turned off, and his Mercedes ended up doing a rather ungraceful 180 on the exit, allowed I think almost the entire grid to end up overtaking him by that one, and went from being a very, very happy man to an incredibly frustrated and disappointed one at that. Thankfully, though, if I remember correctly, we could always tell it as a little bit of a kind of happy story, because they did still win in the end, and that's why it's an okay thing to reflect on. But, you know, that is just a lesson, you know, to those that are getting involved, you know, especially when you start to really get to the competitive pointy end of sim racing. It is a lesson to those that are looking to get involved in all of that, about how quickly these things can go wrong, whilst exploring all of these wondrous extra little things you can do to get an advantage, that you do have to be mindful of just those little details from time to time. I think Castorino may have made a bit of a mistake on the last lap. We'll try to catch up with him, as people very concerned about the fact that McLaren is showing some decent pace and catching up to the back of Carpenter. We'll see Castorino. Nope, he actually had a perfectly fine part of the circuit through there. So the leaderboard getting a little bit caught up in all of that. But you can see the gap has very much opened up between himself and Osterman. And whilst the chat is starting to get a little bit on the nervous side, imagine the Finnish driver leading this race maybe as well, because it had that advantage of 3 seconds pretty early on in the grand scheme of things, and now just being chipped away at little bit by little, and that is going to be a bit of a nervous thing for the Bentley driver. Also, how do we play in terms of strategy? You know, the undercut around here, it can become very strong, but if it's only a 1 lap offset, it's not really going to be that great, because you need the tyres to be up to temperature to really be able to lean on them through this middle sector. So when you're out on those fresh tyres, you don't really get the benefits of those tyres for at least a couple of laps. So if you undercut the guy in front of you and then they just simply pit the lap later, it's not really going to change much in terms of the gap. But if you go get someone who's going for a very strong overcut versus quite a heavy undercut, that will see a considerable difference. You will see those fresh tyres really start to reel in some time. But Teemu Karpen, 7 tenths lost on this lap alone, really seems to be struggling at this point in the race. We'll see, has he made contact with the wall at any point? We've got a bit of action actually between Jardy and Sammy Foch. These two very good friends in the Yas heat camp, but the McLaren driver trying to go all the way around the outside of the Bentley. There's contact between the pair of them. Oh, disaster is right in front of our leaders as well. Oh my goodness. And that was Jacob Osterman having to take evasive action over the grass there. Teemu Karpen backed out of the throttle. That's actually managed to somehow close the gap even further. The two of them are side by side as they just left things off. The top 3 are into the pits. It's all kick-off at this point of the race. And Jardier, in the weirdest sequence of events, somehow eventually makes a position over the Bentley, as flashing of the lights there from behind. That will be the I would imagine the next McLaren in tow, is it? Or is it Lewis Rotas? Not quite actually sure who that is in hot pursuit. That is Soldatov in actual fact. But what a sequence of events we just had there. But now, crucial point in this race, Timo Karppinen just gets into his pit box now. Where is Osterman? He's further up the pit lane as more and more cars head into the pits. You can see, look at the time boards. So many inside that lead group have come into the pits now. They don't want to do much more of this race on that opening set of tyres, as I imagine that we will start to see the likes of Osterman will probably hit the ground a little bit sooner than Timo Karppinen, but that gap came down in all of that chaos and action. Timo Karppinen having to show just a little bit, and that is Osterman on his way. Timo Karppinen on the wheels on the ground now. There's Castorino as well, and halfway through this race, that is your top three. No margins between any of them. They're on the same tyres, the same strategy, and they are nose to tail between one another. Just a second separates the Bentley and the McLaren, but that Bentley may be able to fire those tyres up a bit quicker, but he has 3 warnings and 10 seconds worth of damage, as my fantastic viewers do me some fantastic work of searching around all these extra pieces of information. Grant Carreca applying the pressure to Mateus Good. He's gone to the inside line. Mateus Good needed to defend that one to stop the McLaren coming through. He's getting pushed a little bit wide on the exit, but does just about manage to do it. And Zabsi raises a very good point. How on earth did he manage to get warnings around here? That's incredibly... I think I could only imagine that is a very ambitious move from Iamolo side by side with Mateus Good now. And that's a tricky part of the circuit to make this stick, and he does back out of it. No, he doesn't. In actual fact, he gets the move done. Mateus Good's the one that backs out of it. Flashes the lights there. Not happy about that one whatsoever. But I think it looked like fairly close racing, although Iamolo immediately into the wall, so there'll be a bit of extra damage on board the Lamborghini there as well. I would have to think that the warnings either would have come about from maybe skipping that part of the S's that we just saw there as a white flag for Nostroza. I don't think anything too catastrophic as well. Or the alternative, I would have thought maybe on the exit of Hell Corner. I think that is a part where you can kind of make use of the grass, but it's a part of the circuit that it will class as an extension, I think. Not 100% certain on that though, but I tell you what, he has got a lot of work to be doing right now, because Jacob Osterman, he has got the bit between his teeth. He knows that right now that the Bentley in front of him at one point that was unreachable is almost on his front splitter, as Castorino, 2.2 seconds between himself and Osterman. He's just waiting in the background. He's just going to let these two scrap for a bit, see what happens, and maybe he can come to the end of the pit contact, and a massive mistake from Osterman, and Timo Karppinen into the gravel, and Karppinen surely out of contention for the race win. Osterman surely will be here with a penalty, and Castorino will be the net race leader, but Karppinen, much to the despair of everyone in the chat, I'm sure, down towards P8, make it P8 with Tinko van der Velde making his way through as well, and disaster, a massive error from Jacob Osterman. Just looked like he got way too late on the brakes in towards turn 1. We'll go on board with the McLaren. Unfortunately, I've just missed it. That's difficult. I do apologise, everybody. But unfortunately, what happened... it's so difficult to say from the camera angle that we had there, but I could just see the closing speed that Osterman had in towards turn 1. It just looks too severe. We'll have to see what the stewards make of it. They'll have plenty more camera angles and time to replay all of that. But unfortunately, disaster for Timo Karppinen, who's already got warnings, has got damage to his car as well. And we'll have to see how that all plays out. And no, I don't think it'll be quite a month ban for Osman. These mistakes, these errors, unfortunately do happen. Yeah, a very, very frustrating moment for both of those drivers. And I was just saying, Castorino, he's going to sit back and wait and see what happens. He waited, and this has allowed him to very much look to be in the lead of this race. Timo Karppinen immediately still locked onto the gearbox of the BMW. And yes, there was definitely quite a bit of contact between the two of them, because that Bentley did fly into the gravel, so it was quite clear nothing too insignificant. But unfortunately, I think Osterman, once he made that mistake, just had nowhere really to go. You don't really have much in the way of opportunity once you're committed to the braking zone. Whether you've got it right or got it wrong, that's kind of the line that you are taking, and fingers crossed for the best. And unfortunately, that's just not the way that things ended up playing out. Karppinen pushing on though, and try and see what he can do about Tinko van der Velde. We'll keep an eye on the stewards' inquiries and also this fight alongside Matthias Kuhn, who is hunting down Iamolo once more as well. As we've got something that seems to be under review with quite a hefty penalty. But it hasn't been dished out, so maybe that's actually awaiting some form of updates. We'll just hold fire on that for the time being. But it does look like that is under investigation now by the stewards, so we'll see what they conclude in all of that. Like I say, they'll look at every replay angle and every way that you possibly can to get that incident into perspective and see whether or not they determine it to be a penalty. It looked pretty slam dunk from the outside, I must admit, based on the severity of the contact, but who knows, it could be a whole different picture when you're on board each of those cars. We'll see what the stewards come back and conclude. Castorino not particularly gaining over the McLaren at this point in time. Also, interesting strategy from Luke Whitehead. He's gone for a very strong overcut strategy. So he's looking, he knows he perhaps doesn't have the most competitive package around here, but he's looking to really make use of those fresh tyres in the closing stage of the race. And maybe if others start to make mistakes, the penalties continue to roll in, that this overcut strategy might start to come good for the man. It's P2 in the standings and is your race winner from last week. So we'll see what he is able to achieve. Timo Karppinen continues to apply the pressure onto Tinko van der Velde, who is your reigning champion and your championship leader. That I think that would have looked to swap around if Timo had managed to close out the victory today. I think now it's going to be extreme. There's going to be almost nothing to choose between Tinko and Luke Whitehead. And Karppinen's into the pits. Karppinen's into the pits, I think, based on the reaction in the chat, as he got a drive-through penalty for corner cuts. It just goes from bad to worse for Mr. Carpet in the number 9 Bentley, a man everyone was cheering on. And it will certainly not be a Bentley victory today around the mountain. It won't be a second victory around the mountain for Timo Karppinen, and a very, very frustrating day for the Finnish driver. He does the drive of shame, and I have to say that is... and he is going to retire to the pit lane. I can sort of understand why. I think at this point he's had enough. So unfortunate there for Timo. Of course, the drive-through penalty, I don't, maybe driving a little bit of frustration, but he'd already accumulated the vast majority of those warnings already. So, unfortunately, that is kind of part of how his race was playing out as it was. But certainly, as there's yellow flags out for Noah Reeder and Luke Addison. Noah Reeder going very slowly. Henrik Gamble's going to make his way through as well. So that's his teammate benefiting and all of that. But something has kicked off. Everything's kicking off all the time in this race. Noah Reeder dropping a couple of positions then. It looks like he's going to do it all by himself. We'll go on board with the Lamborghini driver as he heads up towards turn 2. Does he get his braking zone wrong on the entry? And the answer is... oh my goodness, gets a big tank slapper. Very unusual, and I think that may be the TC0 philosophy that we're seeing kind of at the moment in the world of ACC. Unfortunately, going wrong for the German driver, and Luke Addison and Henrik Gamble both making their way through as a result. And yeah, there's your lesson, kids, that if you are going to gamble on the TC off life, that is how quickly it can go wrong. Meanwhile, his teammate Marco Bischoff currently trying to see if he can get himself up into P2. He's all got a little bit of traffic, but he has got the straight line speed advantage over the Porsche. Not too much of one. Can't quite get the nose down the inside into the chase, but he can under braking in towards turn 21. Lobmeyer goes for the over and under, but I don't think he's going to be able to do anything to stop the number 1 man in the server. Of course, remember, if you are new to the world of LFM, these numbers are their relative elo in the server to one another, so their licenses, so they have worked so hard to bump up in rating over time. And Marco Bischoff, who veers off briefly into the grass, managed to gather it all together before the braking zone for Hell's Corner. He is not just a number 1 man in this server, but he is also the number 1 man on the LFM platform, full stop. achieved a fantastic thing of getting the alien level license. I think we've had some extra tiers actually added to that one as well. As Neil's a legend of the ACC and sim racing community, puts his first bit of chat in towards the stream. Big welcome to you. It'd be wonderful to have you back in the world of the Pro Series. Of course, we were graced with his presence and had some fantastic racing with him. Especially Paul Ricard was quite the hit last season, battling all the way with Luke Whitehead and Tinko van der Velde to the very end of that race. Although rather unfortunately miscalculated the help that he provided Tinko in the closing stages from his perspective. But certainly a fantastic driver, and it would be brilliant to have him in their series as well. And also same invitation goes out to Mitchie that we had in the chat earlier on as well. Mitchie Tauscher, if you want to dabble in the world of the Pro Series as well, it'd be fantastic to have you here, because it is just a fantastic championship. We have some of the best drivers on the ACC platform competing at the highest level, and you are treated with action from start to finish, whether you are competing on the grid and regardless of where you are in the order, or if you are like me and watching all of the chaos unfold and just being treated to some fantastic action. If you are enjoying the action, do consider following the channel. We are just 3 followers away from that 800 follower milestone. It would be incredible if we could hit that tonight, and we are so close to it with just over half an hour left of racing to go. As Grantis Korekis, this fight reignited between himself and his teammate, as the two Veloce cars once again battling towards turn 2. The McLaren driver trying to see what he can do. He's got good straight line speed, of course, on board that car, closing in all the way. Yellow flag for somebody. That's Dennis Beachstalker at the tail end of the grid. Korekis isn't going to be able to make his way by. What are the kicking off, though, further down the order? It's all going on in towards turn 1, as Henrik Gamble seemed to have made his way past Addison and Noah Reader coming through as well. We also saw Beachstalker. He's brought out the yellow flag. I think he's gone into the pit stop. He's got going again, so I think maybe, was there something that has taken place? Has he had a wheel issue or something like that? Polikov's had an issue over the course of the top part of the mountain. It's just kicking off full stop. We'll try to see if we can catch some of these various things on the replays. So we had squabbles going on with Noah Readers. Here we go. This is Addison down in towards turn 1, sent into the gravel by Henrik Gamble. Noah Reader following his teammate through. Says thank you very much. Veetstalker, meanwhile, he's facing in completely the wrong direction and has just about managed to loop his way back around. And then Polykov, what happened to him? If we can just about catch that one as well, everything's fine. So leaderboard maybe just getting a little bit on the spooky side, because with everything that's been kicking off in this race, you can possibly forgive it for being just a little bit cautious and spooked at all of what's been going on. Grantis Korekis again trying to make a move down towards turn 21. Can't quite do it in the McLaren as he applies the pressure to his teammate once more. But Luke Whitehead, with a decent amount of straight line speed in that Porsche, able to keep the McLaren at bay for the time being. Also worth noting, Castorino has not closed in the gap to Jacob Osterman, but has a decision been made by the steward? It has, and it is a 10-second time penalty for Jacob Osterman. So that will drop him down to P4, I do believe, if my maths on the fly is correct. Tinko van der Velde almost actually within touching distance of benefiting out of that as well, which considering he started down in P12 I think for this race, he'd be pretty pleased about in all of that. The man who leads the championship would actually end up, I think, extending his championship lead just through staying out of the carnage and the chaos. But Osterman, 10-second time penalty for him, and that certainly takes him out of contention. Castorino, he'll be able to see that, and he will be making sure that he doesn't do anything to jeopardise what is now an almost guaranteed win around here. I'm going to stop talking on that front because I will probably commentate to curse him. That's the last thing I want to do. Meanwhile, just a couple of tenths of a second between Noah Reader and his teammates, Henrik Gamble. Gamble P14 trying to hold back that Lamborghini. Anderson's still very much in tow, very much involved in this fight, but unable to do anything just yet. White flag for the number 14 car, Frank Briat. Not sure if he's had too much of a moment. But yeah, it is very much a case of patience. It did look like, especially when those tyres were fired up, that in that time, Osterman was defensively the faster of the pairing. Oh, big mistake! Big mistake for Noah Reader. Anderson just about manages to weave his way through. We cut to that car right at that point in time, but whilst he was sandwiched between himself, my goodness, Anderson and his teammate Henrik Gamble, Noah Reader gets it all wrong. Blind entry in towards Skyline by the looks of it, I think, and we'll try to go on board with him here. The Sprout Esports Lamborghini had already started going wrong into the concrete through McPhillamys now. And the car's just going to give way for underneath him on the entry as they head over the curb. It's the curb again, just bounces his way along. And Luke Anderson just about managed to weave his way through there. And unfortunately, big damage and enough damage for Noah to decide to call it a day in the end. So disappointment for him. That allows Henrik Gamble to start to run away just a little bit. Someone else that can't run away, though, is Iamolo, because he's got Mateus Good all over his gearbox. If the camera would actually look over, that'd be nice. As Iamolo defending that inside line, it's incredibly difficult to make it stick around the outside, but he's trying his best. The Belgian driver, Iamolo's gone very deep, and the over and under would have been a contact in the mid-corner. These two have been bumping into one another the entire race, but very forcefully, the number 10 car makes his way in towards P8 as Iamolo almost heads on the inside in towards the cutting. Will the stewards end up having to say something about that? We'll have to wait and see. They've already noted the incident. They've already noted 2 incidents actually between them, so quite clearly it was all kicking off shortly before then as well. But these two have certainly been going toe to toe all race long and do make up your closest fight on circuit. As just checking in on your leaders. Osterman right now 1.7 seconds clear of Castorino, but quite clearly has that 10-second time penalty, which is going to drop him at this point in time, I think, maybe even actually down to P5, because Tinko van der Velde, where's this pace come from? 59.8 on the last lap of the race. And this is what we expect from the reigning champion. Frank Brea has just come into the pits as well, as not quite sure why he's done that. Maybe out of sequence in terms of stops. Something has happened to the SGL car, I do believe, anyway. But Tinko van der Velde, see what this lap is from him. George Boothby's just hitting the timing beam now. Does a there you go. He's about to hit the timing beam in a second. 2:04. 2:0 for Tinko van der Velde, almost the fastest man on track right now. This is what we expect. Maybe his tyre pressure is a little bit out of place in the opening stint. That BMW just hasn't quite been seeming as settled around this circuit as we would have wanted Tinko to have it, because of course he's always so dialed into being quick at every single track that we head to. But still charging on, and maybe in with a chance of a podium, because with that 10-second time penalty that Osterman is carrying, that will just about take him to sitting behind George Boothby. It would literally go down to thousandths at the gaps that we have at the moment. So Tinko needs to catch up towards Boothby and make an overtake, and then just hover around that point if he wants to go for a podium. But we shall wait and see on that front. But my goodness, very much looking like he is dialed in once more on that front. And I'm not quite sure what penalty you're referring to, Pervins. I think that's Josh, if I remember. But I'll try to track it down. We'll have a little bit of a chat with that. Of course, the stewards have a wide variety of viewing angles, and I see the incident between Carpenter and Osterman. They do have a lot of angles. They may have, who knows, from a different perspective, they may have considered, look, Anderson, I think they needed to consider a bit further away from the concrete on that one, but they may have considered that Carpenter, did he brake a little bit too early or something like that, because the closing speed was extremely abrupt. Now, I have no doubt that Osterman missed his braking point by a big amount, but maybe there was other factors involved, and that's what the stewards have looked at and tried to kind of incorporate into their decision. But yeah, so they have 1,000,001 angles to look at, and that is how they have concluded the incident overall. But yes, it was extremely heavy contacts and very unfortunate as well. We were looking like we were going to be treated to an incredible battle for the lead between Carpenter and Osterman. Unfortunately, it came very close to an end in Astroza, almost having a massive incident through the chase there, but thankfully the Ferrari managed to just about cover off the Porsche in the end. It was a lot of speed through the chase there, but not enough for the Chilean driver to get past, who's had a little bit of an up and down day so far in the cockpit of that car. But in the grand scheme of things, for one of, I'm not sure if this is his first main return to sim racing, of course, coming back from heavy injury. Overall, I think fair to say a specialist over in Gran Turismo, but extremely quick on ACC as well, as and has made his way back into the cockpit of the Porsche, and is having a fairly good showing today, and is showing good fighting spirit as well, as he continued to have done over the last few weeks, recovering from injury as well. So fantastic to have him back in the server and in the championship. Hopefully we'll be seeing more of Inestrosa, but right now he has other things in his mind. He is hounding the back of the Ferrari in front of him of Luke Addison, but unable to make a move stick. And they've got Henrik Gamble in that Lamborghini, who I think is running around a little bit battered and bruised, but then again, at this point, a lot of these cars are running quite battered and bruised. So they are just trying to see if they can keep it all together in the final 23 minutes of this race. It's been a fantastic one so far, as fights for the final positions inside these top 10 as well still kicking off. We have Carreras versus Whitehead, and the McLaren driver continuing to hound the back of the Porsche driver, who's on those fresh tyres, and that overcut strategy maybe just allowing him to keep that advantage that he needs right now over Carreras. Of course, Carreras dropped back to this position due to getting a penalty in the early stages of the race for pushing another car off the circuit, as Iamolo versus Mateus could also taking place as well. And all of those incidents are involving these two, once again resulting in NFA. So quite clearly the stewards have seen it, that what was dished out one way was dished out equally and fairly in the other direction. Neither of those drivers will feel that opinion, I am sure, but that is a way they've decided for the time being. But I imagine that there could still very much be some opportunities for these two to squabble and scrap to the very end. Florian Duacop being one of them as well, trying to put the pressure on the other BMW head of Kohlberg Brennan in the number 32 car. Of course, very tricky to make moves when you've got two identical cars, and if you have similar paces, where if your tyres are at similar phases, it's just, when you have a circuit like Bathurst where there's only a couple of opportunities where you can really look to confidently make a move stick, and confidently I say kind of loosely, because this circuit will just bite you at any instance that you start to push around here just a little bit too much, so you really have to try to nail the approach. We've seen it go wrong time and time again, but Florian Duacop, a man that has won around this circuit before, and he is looking to try to do something about that. Someone else that is making moves, by the looks of it, as I just tried to cut to Polikov, it didn't quite pick it up straight away, unfortunately, but I do believe Polikov and Ada Walsingham have swapped positions, and we're going to see Polikov through Forest Elbow, now under pressure by Walsingham, who I will go on board the front splitter with. You can see the Lamborghini trying to see how he can carry momentum. I will try to catch up with the STL guys in a moment, Mr. Squid, and I will see what we can do as Walsingham blasts his way past V10, gloriously roaring away as he flies his way down towards 21 and gets himself into 26th place. As we go, let's see if we can go for a little bit of a hunt for the STL Esports team cars, as looking up and down the order. So I think the first one is Albin Manson, who unfortunately is 25th out of 29 cars. So it's unfortunately not been the greatest of days for the STL team, but still pushing on. And I think that he is actual fact the only one that's representing that team. It's a very distinct and nice looking livery on board all of those flurry of McLarens. We had a lot more of them at the beginning of this race than at the end. Florian Duacop has finally got the move done on Kohlberg Brennan, and we will have a look and see quite how he managed it. Looks like he's had a good run down through the chase and in towards 21. Does he dive under brakes, or does he get it done on the exit? See, it doesn't look like he's entertaining the move on the entry there, but just a little bit of a wide moment for Kohlberg Brennan, and we go on board with Florian as they go here side by side in towards Murray's corner, and in the end, just confidence under brakes for the other BMW and Brenham just conceding that position in the end. So we'll see whether or not he is able to run away from the other BMW. Now he's managed to make his way past. Looking at the pace advantage he's had, you would have to think so. Meanwhile, we could see still a little bit of a couple of clashes at the front end of the grid. Of course, the overall race win right now does seem to very much be heading the way of Castorino, unless other factors end up coming into play. But he is closing that gap towards Osterman, and I'm sure that the likes of Tinko, who is still handling the back of George Boothby, he'll be hoping there's a bit of a scrap for P1, because that will, with of course Osterman's penalty, will drop him that bit further down the order. Only 18 minutes left of this race left to go. We are only 2 followers away now from 800. Incredible how close we've got to that. I thought it was a little bit of an ambitious one to set as a target for tonight, but you guys have been absolutely fantastic. A warm welcome to all of you that have joined here at LFM for the first time. Fantastic to have you here, and hope you are enjoying all of the action. And if you're not followed already, do think about giving the channel a follow, because we have action like this every single week. We've also got the Endurance Series getting coverage now on Sundays as well, so you have all of that extra LFM goodness. Meanwhile, Koreka still trying to apply the pressure to Luke Whitehead. Of course, his teammate and his other teammate, George Boothby, really has got a lot of pressure from Tinko van der Velde at this point in time. Has not been able to find a way past in the BMW, the straight line speed advantage of the McLaren. Just a little bit too much, but we'll go on board with Tinko in this BMW as they fly over the crest once more. Look at that, concrete walls absolutely a hair's width away from each of these cars, flowing side to side as they head through this part of the circuit. Angelo, I think, has made a little bit of a mistake further down. That gap has opened up considerably between himself and Matthias Kuhn as they now dive through the dipper once more. But the McLaren, it looks planted through there. Of course, one of the newest cars, I think, if not the newest car in the world of ACC. That was not a fantastic line, though, through Forest Elbow, and now potentially an opportunity for Tinko to get a run down into the chase. His speed won't build up right up until the closing stages, but here we go. Here's the momentum. Up to 270, 275, 280. The numbers scrolling by faster, but I can say them. And towards the outside line, it's a big, big move, potentially from Tinko van der Velde. The cameraman can't even find them, but he has managed to make it stick. And brave under brakes there from the reigning Pro Series champion, and he gets the move done down in towards 21. George Boothby, smart heads up driving there, and they managed to get through their 2 professionals at one of the best certainly some of the best drivers on the ACC platform. These 2 were the contenders for the championship last season. They had some fantastic races, and unfortunately it does look like George Boothby's actually got a little bit of damage on board his car there, so that's maybe why he's lost a bit of pace at this stage of the race. But Tinko, right now with the laps he is doing, looking to continue that charge towards trying to see, can he sneak a podium out of this race? Bear in mind, he started P12. There's been chaos up and down this entire grid throughout the entirety of this race, but you can just never count the Dutchman out. He hasn't looked quite as competitive, quite as dialed in to this BMW as he did consistently in the Audi last season, but he is still there, he is still fast, and he is still looking to make the most of every opportunity. And thank you for the raid from Van Binsbergen. What a name, that is fantastic. Thank you so much, a warm welcome to those of you that have just joined us over here and the fantastic world of LFM. This is the Case King Pro Series, and this is where all of the best action is on the world of ACC. Look at this. Tinko van der Velde now gapping George Boothby. That's the difference. That's the confidence, the damage is all making amongst these cars, and we'll have to see how much can he push on in the next few laps. Currently the gap between himself and Jacob Osterman is looking around the 12.5 second mark, I do believe. Dangerous to get me to do maths on the fly when we've got action left, right, centre in this grid. Generally speaking, the numbers not too bad, but when these guys are doing all sorts of shenanigans, it generally goes out the window, really. But so he needs to find a couple of seconds or so. He'll be hoping that Castorino is continuing to just chip away a couple of tenths every lap as George Boothby brings out the white flag for a moment. Not sure if he's made an error, maybe a bit wide down in towards turn 21, but doesn't look like it's anything too severe in the grand scheme of things, although maybe got mighty close to the back of Tinko. damage on board that McLaren, but it's still very quick in a straight line. That's what has stopped the BMW from being able to make an overtake for such a long time. But Tinko will be hoping he can have a clean run to just run away into the distance now. Unlikely to really come across anyone else on circuit in the remaining 15 minutes of this race. Second, these guys, they are racers through and through. They want to earn these positions on track. And Castorino right now, whilst he does have to be mindful, with Lewis Roters, who's still kind of lurking around in the background, he's only 4 seconds or so adrift in that McLaren. He will want that position. Osterman was extremely close to the concrete there, and he's got a little bit of traffic to contend with as well. And this could very much actually work in favour for Castorino, because Osterman's going to have to come across it first, and there's not really any opportunities to get past these cars through this part of the circuit. You see Osterman a little bit offline, went a little bit deep through the S's. He's still very competent through this part of the circuit. The McLaren's surprisingly good through there, but it is going to be tricky. I think, in actual fact, Osterman may have got off fairly lightly in the end. Not the best of sectors for Castorino, and you can see Osterman now should get the slipstream from that car in front. I think that may be Polikov, if I'm not mistaken, in the Porsche. Flashing the lights there is the number 7 car. Will he make his way through? He's going to go up the inside into the chase, and it is going to get through very easily, and I'm sure Castorino will be through in just a moment as well. There's a big bit of contact from Angel Stroza, who was pushing on very hard to the back of Luke Addison's Ferrari and clatters the concrete on the right-hand side, continuing to be more battered and bruised. These cars really do come out as completely different shapes to the way they started these races by the time you finish hurtling your way around the mountain. But they are very much the battle scars of taking on a circuit as demanding as this. Just one follower away from 800. So who will be that last person? Can we creep over that margin? So that would be such a fantastic achievement if we can. As Marco Bischoff now also in the hunt for trying to close his way in towards the top 10. He's got a little bit of extra work to do if he does want to get 10th place in this race. Vante Barra, you see him just going past your screen and out of frame. He's got a little bit of work to do if he wants to close into the back of that Ferrari, but he has got pace at this point in time, taking 0.3 of a second out of Mattia De Campo on the last lap once more. And that Lamborghini can make moves, and so can Marco Bischoff, very quick, and of course is a little bit out of position at this stage in the race. Had that contact with Florian Duacop, but the Lamborghini driver once again just pushing on and trying to see what opportunities he can still get out of that one. Also, I did see someone actually asking about that inquiry, and I think, so was that the fight between number 1 and number 22? It was, and it was a no further action in the end. So maybe the contact, we didn't see the main contact that ended up taking place that led to Marco Bischoff going around, but I have a feeling it could have been quite similar to what we saw with Luke Whitehead and Grantis Correcas, which was very, very scary heading through the chase. But, maybe if there was a late move or something like that, that may have caused the contact and hence no further action. But unfortunately, I didn't see it on camera, so my opinion is even more limited than normal. Unfortunately, Albin Manson, the last remaining of the STL Esports cars, has just dropped a position by the looks of it to Aidan Walsingham. We'll try to catch up with him and see what happened. You see that Lamborghini, I think it's going to be a fairly straightforward move in the end. This Lamborghini closing in towards the chase. V10 roaring in the background. You'll hear that high-pitched hum as he starts to make his way and close the distance. What happens to Albin Manson, though? Does he let him through? And yes, we get a lovely bit of backfiring, the flames coming out the back of the McLaren. But Aidan Walsingham says thank you very much and makes his way into 25th position. Not the easiest of races for either of these two drivers, but still pushing one another on and showing that even after 80 minutes of racing around the mountain, that you can still be having fantastic racing up and down this grid. And thank you very much for the kind words. You guys are just so lovely and wonderful in the chat. It is an absolute pleasure. And whilst these drivers do sometimes give me a little bit of a hard time to keep up with all the action that we have going on, I wouldn't have it any other way. Marco Bischoff still applying pressure to De Campo with that 10-minute timer remaining to go. So he should have around 6 laps left in total to make an opportunity happen. It does look like he will be trying to see if he can do that, because he has got the advantage generally in the pace. He just looks a bit bottlenecks, and you know, but that middle sector, it's so difficult to progress past someone in front of you. I'll tell you what though, someone that's looking pretty speedy at this phase of the race, Luke Whitehead, who's gone from struggling early on. I need to actually catch up Luke Anderson side by side with Hendrik Gamble. Oh, very brave around the outside of turn 2, but he can't make it stick. That's the problem with the camber, and welcome to the party. Angel and Stroza side by side. There's the Ferrari of Anderson, comes out of headlights, big stretch of oversteer from number 37 car, but in the end they just about get through, but Cussing okay, and this battle will rage on once more. The battle for P14, Gamble, Anderson and Stroza all kicking off once more. And to let you know, Hungaroring is where we'll be heading to next. Bentley territory in the past, so could very much be an opportunity. Meanwhile, Valentin Barry, oh, it's almost an identical mistake to his good friend Jardier. Out Forest Elbow, by the looks of it, the back of the car has just let go on him. I'll just see Luke Whitehead won't be able to make a move on this lap, so let's see what happened there to the Frenchman. Disaster in the closing stages of this race. I'm all completely in shenanigans with my overlays. Apologies for that, everybody. So there we go, replay now, looking at Valentin heading towards Forest Elbow, and oh, he's just gone too deep. Oh, very odd way to lose the car. Thankfully, managed to have a quick recovery. Doesn't collect anyone in the process. With Jardier, we really saw the swing, the pendulum happen very early in the braking zone and then hit the wall on the outside portion of the circuit. Valentin there, he went deep initially, and then in trying to scrub the speed off and not go into the wall on the exit, just had nothing in terms of rear traction and ended up binning it there, unfortunately. Meanwhile, Aiden Walsingham now is facing backwards. Whereabouts on the circuit is this? Was that Castorino just making his way through? It was a scary, scary moment for your race leaders. Aiden Walsingham, very awkward point on the circuit, and these cars, Walsingham actually seems to have found quite a nice parking space in all of that. And so we'll try to see, can we get a different angle? That's not the car I wanted to look at. That's Jardier making his way through, as that's not a great camera angle either. These cameramen, I have to say, have not done a fantastic job. Thankfully, Walsingham manages to get out of the way, but has had to retire the car. Heavy damage on board that one. I don't think, though, I'm going to be able to show you what took place there, because it is all kicking off once more between Luke Anderson, Hendrik Gamble in the Lamborghini, wide on the exit. Ferrari getting the momentum, heading up towards the Cussing. Will go on board with Stroza once more, because look at it, the Porsche almost into the rear diffuser of the Ferrari. I thought that was going to be a punt into the wall there, but thankfully they managed to stay out of each other's way. But these gaps closing in on the final points of this race. Just 7 minutes remaining. Whitehead 0.3 of a second behind George Boothby, his teammate. Bischoff closing in on what is now P10, with Valentin having made that mistake and looking to hound the back of the Ferrari driver. And then Stroza, Anderson and Gamble locking horns once more, trying to see if any one of them can make progress. Whitehead bringing out the white flag a moment ago. Nothing too dramatic though, maybe just a little bit of a compromise line through 21 and 22. Stays in P6 for the time being, though. Also, penalty kind of position-related update in the grand scheme of things. Tinko van der Velde right now still would not quite make the podium with Osterman's penalty. Your finishing order, I believe, would be Castorino, Roters, Osterman, and then Tinko van der Velde, George Boothby, and then Whitehead. But Whitehead very much looking to just try to change that in these final few moments. He's looking very quick, of course, has some of the freshest tyres in this grid, if not the freshest, especially inside the drivers for the top 10, using all of that Porsche's strengths, the cornering capabilities that this car has, and the acceleration will go on board the rear diffuser of the McLaren. Watch this Porsche, the way it drives its way out of the corner. Luke Whitehead, that's extremely brave. Surely you can't go for an overtake there as they fly up through this sequence of the circuit. Luke Whitehead has to back out of that one, and I thought that that was going to start becoming an extremely scary moment. He thought about it, but he's also got Carreras looming in behind. He's been closing in all the time after getting that penalty that he served in the pits. Meanwhile, Anderson, Stroza and Gamble once again scrabbling away. Gamble protects that inside line. It's so important. Stroza going for the over and under, almost pushing the Ferrari along as they head up in towards the Cussing, looking towards the inside line, but he can't make anything stick. What about Marco Bischoff? Almost glued to the rear of the Ferrari. These Ferraris seemingly struggling at this stage in the race. Sean Tempest and Samir Foss swapping positions, and it looks like it may go the way of the number 19 McLaren on the exit of 22. He does in fact get the move done, so Samir down to 24th position. Valentin going slowly, caused a lot of damage on board his car. Luke Whitehead again unable to match the top speed of the McLaren that he sees in front of him. It's just so quick. He was the benefactor of that exact quality last season at Paul Ricard. He was able to keep Tinko and Niels Knox, arguably faster cars, behind for such a long time. Didn't quite go his way in the end, but very much showed exactly why this car is so strong in the race. Even when its race pace isn't quite there, it's just such an easy one to defend with because it just is so quick. But Luke Whitehead, very, very talented man in the cockpit of that car. These guys, teammates, but quite clearly, you know, they will still race each other very hard. And you can see Whitehead's got a fantastic run heading up the hill. It's a little bit more torque related than outright speed related. This one trying to go towards the outside line, but George Boothby placing his car absolutely perfectly. And this is just allowing Grantis Correcas to just eat his way into this gap. The gap was 1.5, then 1.2, and Luke Whitehead almost on the inside of George Boothby there. I thought there was going to be contact into the cutting, but he just about manages to stay out of the gearbox of the McLaren as we get fantastic pictures as they head through this part of the circuit once more, flying through this part of the mountain. You see almost nose to tail between all three of these cars. They blast their way through. Boothby ahead of Whitehead, ahead of Correcas, and George Boothby again just about doing enough, as by the looks of it is Henrik Gamble on board the front splitter of Innestrosa once again out of filming camera car for the last couple of laps, but maybe now the car to make a move. We'll have a look at it from Gamble's perspective, because there you go, Innestrosa and Luke Addison side by side in towards the cutting, but Luke Addison deep on the brakes then in towards that inside line, and the Porsche unable to do anything about the 296, so unable to make that one stick. And yeah, you have to be so far alongside on the outside line of turn 2 to make it work, because the camber is just so steep. That's where the momentum is, that's where the grip is, and unless you have about half a car's length before the braking zone overlap on the outside line, it just will simply not happen. Just a couple of laps left to go then. Let's see, whereabouts is Osterman right now on the circuit? So yeah, there will be 2 laps then. And you see Castorino right there, but of course looking to inherit the win from that penalty for Osterman. But we still have other fights kicking off all the way to the end. Whitehead still glued to the rear, but here's Correcas. Now the gap between Correcas and Whitehead just a couple of tenths of a second. This is going to get very busy very quickly. How do they play this? It's McLaren's on the right-hand side. I tell you what, this is really going to be an awkward moment now for Luke Whitehead, because he's stuck on the outside line. But my goodness, the run that he got through turn 1 is monstrous. The McLaren and George Boothby will surely fight back on the inside line. They're almost 3 wide, heading up in towards turn 2. Luke Whitehead, brave on the brakes. He's gone a little bit deep, but he's got the fresh tyres. Correcas, the camera car in this one now, but it looks like Whitehead has done it. The drive he got from T1 was absolutely astronomical, and George Boothby in the end unable to fight the grip advantage, but now he just needs to try to stay in contention down the hill towards the chase once more, because if he can, maybe the straight line speed of the McLaren will save him. Marco Bischoff was close up to the back of De Campo once again, but 296 able to keep him behind, as Jacob Osterman will start to make his way in towards Forest Elbow for the penultimate time. It won't be another race, it won't be a first race victory for him. It's looking like it'll go the way of the Italian, but we've seen it all go wrong at this very distance to the end before for Florian Duacop, so let's not count any chickens just yet, but that's the way right now it is looking. Luke Whitehead opening up a gap of almost half a second as they head through Forest Elbow. Will get monstrous drive out of there, but George Boothby, he's still there or thereabouts, and so is Grantis Correcas. Will go on board the rear diffuser of Luke Whitehead. See those McLarens lurking. George Boothby closing all the time. It is formidable in a straight line speed for the McLaren, but I don't think, unless he really sends it up the inside. Oh, he thought about it, but he just can't quite get alongside in towards the braking zone, and surely now the Porsche will start to break away. We saw how quick Luke was through turn 1 last time around, as we go on to the final lap of this race. Marco Bischoff still trying to find opportunity, closing the gap though on that outside line. Mattia De Campo, rough defence from the number 12 car, and it is hard fought from Bischoff as well. Meanwhile, looking back towards these drivers battling for P5, Whitehead half second clear of George Boothby, and Correcas absolutely nose to tail with his McLaren teammates. We're still just one follower away from that mighty 800. Can we do it by the end of this race? It'd be wonderful if we could, but Grantis Correcas unable to make something happen there. The number 27 has brought out the yellow flag. I'm not quite sure who that is for, but Whitehead
manages to withstand the pressure from the McLarens once more up towards turn 2, and surely that does do it, and that does do it for the follow account as well. Big thank you for the incredible support there. Marco Bischoff applying the pressure to De Campo, but De Campo again holds on firmly to that position. He does not want to give up 10th place. Bischoff sent towards the outside line, brave to do it around the outside at the cutting. Surely can't make that one stick, and he can't, and the 296 holds on for the time being. Osterman now heading in towards Forest Elbow for the last time. White flag for Tinko van der Velde, losing a bit of time in traffic, so he definitely won't be contending for a podium. And we've got these other cars contending for the fight in P5 as well. Whitehead still leading this group as they head towards Forest Elbow. It'll be a drag race to the finish line, and we're going to have a few in the closing stages, and we'll try to take them all piece by piece. Osterman heading in towards the chase now, but he's not the man that is going to be coming away with a race victory. He'll be going to the Aston Martin and sits behind him. Korekis not in contention to take back P6, but George Boothby on the attack once more to Luke Whitehead, looking down the inside at the chase. Almost contact between the two teammates. Amadeo Castorino coming into the final corner. We'll see him to the line. George Boothby around the outside. Heavy contact. Castorino wins at Bathurst. Incredible race from him. But it's all about these two, the Veloce crew, absolutely battling toe-to-toe towards the line. Korekis has made his way through as well. And Whitehead and all of that in the end. It's going to be a drag race towards the finish line. Who's going to get the positions? George Boothby ahead of Korekis, ahead of Luke Whitehead in the end. A fantastic squabble between the McLarens, the Porsche, the Veloce Esports crew. They might be teammates, but my goodness, they fight extremely hard. Marco Bischoff, in the end, 3.3 seconds behind Matt De Campo. He was not able to make a move. Meanwhile, Valentin Barrier versus Paul Lobmeyer heading in towards Murray's corner on the final lap of the race. Valentin Barrier, of course, driving a bit wounded at the moment, will hold on to position ahead of the Porsche in the end. Anderson, who's put the pressure on to Henrik Gamble lap after lap. None of these guys in Australia as well in this train have been trying time and time again to get the move done, but they will finish as they have been in that order for such a long time. And the last scrap I think we have going on is it's Veet Shorker that's parked up on the start-finish straight. I think he ran out of fuel at the very end, but here comes Solonsol's straight line speed of the McLaren paying dividends. Ferrari of Pagano sent towards the outside in towards the chase, but the Ferrari very deep under brakes, maybe a little bit too deep. He's managed to just about keep it on circuit, sent towards the outside now. He'll become the inside in towards the final corner. A fantastic scrap for these final positions. Solentov, can he get the move done in the number 17 cars ahead through turn 23? It's going to be a drag race towards the finish line onto the grass. I think Solentov is just about going to do it as they head towards the line. He does by 0.2 of a second, and the last couple of cars make their way to the line. I think that's number 19, the number 20-something, number 20. That is Sam Foch and Sean Tempest. They're scrapping away as well. In actual fact, Alvin Manson applying pressure to the low STL Esports car. He might actually be able to get the run on the exit of the final corner. Who's going to take it out the line? Oh, I think it was Samir, by the smallest of margins, just on theme with everything else that we have had in this race. But my goodness, for 90 minutes of action here at Bathurst, another showstopper of a race in the Pro Series, always putting on an incredible performance. But he didn't get much of a viewing at the end when he crossed the line, but a fantastic race from Amadeo Castorino. Brilliant stuff from him. Hopefully, if we're lucky, we may even be able to have him in for an interview, and he has already got himself in the interview box. Wonderful news. So we will look to bring him in just a moment and talk to our race winner. He may not have done it on circuit, but sometimes that is not what you need to do. You just need to be there to pick off the pieces when it all goes wrong for other people. So Castorino taking another victory in the Case King Pro Series. Your first was on your debut in the top split at Monza last season. You've come back in fine form in that Aston Martin, and you are king of the mountain. Big congratulations to you, and how are you feeling after that one?
Thank you a lot. Yeah, happy to be back to the first place. Like first two races was a bit complicated for me, especially the second race on Paul Ricard. I don't like too much that track, but I like a lot Mount Panorama. It's one of my favorite track. Yeah, it's very hard to do 90 minutes here because you have a lot of pressure. Like one small mistake will be race done because you crash into the wall. So yeah, I'm very happy about that. For sure, a bit lucky the guys in front have a contact and I can take the first place, but I'm happy anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was one of those. There was quite a coincidental bit of timing actually when that all took place, because I was just saying, you know, as Osterman and Carpenter were starting to scrap away, I thought, Castorino, he's going to be sitting there biding his time, waiting for something to happen, and lo and behold, at the very same corner, it all kicks off, and then you find yourself then at that very moment in a race-winning position with Osterman's penalty in play. In those final laps, once you knew that Osterman had that penalty, were you really still trying to hunt him down, do it on track, and kind of get that extra little bit of pride, or was it a case of, you know, I'm doing enough and just seeing it through to the end? What was the mentality from that point of the race onwards?
Yeah, it was more the second, because I mean I was P1 virtually, so I just think I have to make my pace, because also Rotters was behind me and was pushing a lot. Oh, just don't push too much, just manage the gap that I have. And yeah, also Osterman made pretty good on first like 35 minutes, because he was under my pressure but he never made a mistake. Also McLaren was a bit faster than my Aston Martin on the straight, but he never made a single mistake, so also congrats for him. He just made one mistake, the contacts.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you've got hard racing like this, you know, it's Bathurst. Probably, I think, you know, there's a fair argument to say the most difficult track, the most demanding track that we end up facing on ACC. And yeah, you combine that with darkness that we ended up racing in tonight, and you know, some of the best drivers on the platform. Unfortunately, these mistakes do happen. But yeah, no, a fantastic drive from you to just keep on applying that pressure. You know, he could never. I think part of that, you know, maybe a slight lack of patience on his part, you know, was that pressure from you behind in the Aston Martin. It was so good to see that car being in that level of competitiveness in your hands once again. And of course does wonders in terms of really kind of bringing you into championship contention, only a quarter of the way through the season. But a fantastic series of results from you so far. We're heading to Hungaroring for next week's race. I don't think traditionally the nicest of circuits for the Aston Martin, but of course we've got the custom BOP, which may change that up just a little bit. What are your thoughts kind of heading into that one? Very different circuit, of course, to Bathurst.
Yeah. Oh yeah, depends also on the weather, because if it's wet, Aston Martin is better, and also I like a lot the wet tracks when the track is wet. But if it's dry, I like Hungaroring, not that much like Mount Panorama. It's like a Kiami, it's a track that I like, but not my favorite. So I think I hope I could be anyway a good result, maybe not a win, but still stay in top 5 is always the target.
Absolutely, you know, consistency overall is what ends up winning you championships. And whilst obviously it's still early stages yet, you have still put together a very competitive string of results from your side. So fantastic stuff from you. Great to have you back in the commentary box as well for an interview. Of course, we spoke after your debut victory at Monza last time, where you were just on another level with that car. That car was just working beautifully. You were gliding your way through the Ascari chicane like no one else. And here, bit of a different story, but same end result. So fantastic stuff from you, and we look forward to seeing how you get on at Hungaroring.
Yeah, thank you. See you next race.
Thanks a lot, Amadeo. Great there to speak to our racer winner this evening. He may not have done it ultimately on track, but still, fundamentally, when others made mistakes, when others lost their composure, their patience, Amadeo, he was right there to capitalise on every advantage. And he had some scary moments as well. Maybe not moments that was self-generated as such, but with cars flying across in front of him, it was a terrifying thing. That's why, any of these drivers, whether they got through the entire thing cleanly, whether they had damage that they were carrying all the way to the line, it's such an achievement to finish this race. 90 minutes around here, just as Amadeo said, is such a daunting and demanding prospect.
and it's testament that whilst we did lose a chunk of cars from the race this evening in slightly typical when Bathurst goes wrong fashion, is a testament to the talent that we have in this level and on the LFM platform, and what this platform does of bringing these racers together on ACC, as to why we ended up with just such an action-packed race from start to finish. I also barely even got to briefly touch upon it because of everything that was going on at the end, but we did creep over that 800 follower mark at the end of that race. Big thank you. What an incredible amount of support, and a warm welcome to all of those that have joined this channel. This is the sort of action we have every single week, so it is fantastic to have you here with us on this journey. We'll have a bit of a run through the race results then from tonight. So there you go, confirmation there with Castorino sitting top of the sheets with Rotors, followed by Osterman. Tinko Vandervelde not quite getting the podium in the end, with Boothby, Karekas, Whitehead, Kun, Iamalo, DeCampo, Bischoff, Barrier, Lobmeyer, Gamble and Addison rounding out your top 15. And then as we make our way onto the second C, Angel and Strozer on his fantastic return down into sim racing. That we have Kolberg, Brennan, Vassner, Duakop, Drexler, Solstov, Pagano, Tempest, Foch, Manson, Polikov, Jardier, disappointing day for him, Vitshalka, Walsingham and Briata. Your first of the DNS with Ida, Karpinen, Game, Fischer, Hosseini, Coesfeld, Nordi, Coots and Rainier. Your final DNS on the board then, and just going to show the level of talent that is in some of the names I've just mentioned. One of those drivers took pole position, was leading the majority of this race, and ended up being a DNF, and got drive-through penalty from amongst all of that as well. So just it's such an unfortunate thing, and whilst not the easiest of circuits to get a drive-through at, I must admit, it still can be done, and it just goes to show how hard these guys are pushing the limits every time they race. They're laying it all on the line and giving it everything, and it gives us some fantastic action all the way along. But another brilliant evening of action here on the Case King Pro Series, and I want to say a big thank you to all of you once again for the kind words of support, all of you that have joined during the stream, and once again chipping across over to another milestone as we close in remarkably on towards that goal of 1,000 followers. And thank you all of those that have joined. But more importantly, as well as tuning in and staying in touch with all of the action that this fantastic series has to offer, if you have enjoyed what you have seen tonight and fancy having a little bit of a go at it yourself, maybe not quite at Bathurst for the first one, quite a daunting one to make your way into, but overall, if you want to take up the challenge of what the likes of the Pro Series and the world of LFM has to offer, then head over to the lowfuelmotorsport.com website, get yourself a license, get yourself signed up, and you can work your way through the ranks and compete in some of these fantastic championships, the daily racing course, endurance series, and all of that good stuff. And also there are some rather snazzy prizes across a whole host of those series that are up for grabs that you can compete for. And if maybe the world of ACC isn't quite your thing and you fancy dabbling in some a little bit of other action, types of circuits, types of cars, then also R Factor 2, of course, on the LFM platform as well, with a great deal of variety there. If you want to take a look at the Nordschleife on R Factor 2, you can. We'll see if something happens at ACC at some point, based on recent events. I'll say nothing further, but certainly at least currently available to you in a server near you, that the R Factor 2, that is certainly an area where you can look to tackle that fantastic circuit. Probably the only other circuit I think that really amounts to the same level of challenge, if not more so, than trying to tackle Bathurst. Very, very demanding circuit, of course, the Nordschleife indeed. So lots of good stuff that you can get yourself stuck into. And if you just want to continue to be a part of this amazing growing community and share all good things, sim racing, real racing, or just send us a picture of your dog from time to time. We're a friendly bunch. We like to see what all of our members are getting up to and enjoy each and every moment with all of you along the way. Then also consider joining the Discord server as well. It'd be lovely to have you all in there. And of course, if you want to tune in for more of this incredible action, as well as action from the Endurance Series and all other good stuff LFM going forwards in the future, then do consider giving the channel a follow. Big thank you once again for all of that incredible support this evening and for the support over the last few months. This channel only started a couple of months ago, and so the fact that we're closing in towards 1,000 followers as quickly as we are is just utterly remarkable. So thank you everybody so much for all of that. And whilst we will be heading to perhaps a slightly less outright dramatic circuit of the Hungaroring. Trust me when I say that whether it be weather playing into effect or just these Pro Series drivers doing what they do best and giving drama from start to finish, or giving me just fundamentally a bit of a headache with trying to keep up with all the action, that we will have a great race once more at the same time, same place next week. So do be sure to tune in with us once again, where we'll be heading for round 4 of the Pro Series. But the drama continues, the action never stops, and the overtaking, the glory, the crashes, the highs, the lows are just ablaze as ever. So look forward to having as many of you there as possible next week. But for tonight then, it's goodbye.